Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Victoria Nasirova. On September 2, 2016, police received a call from Olga Tsvik, 35, a Ukrainian immigrant who worked as a beautician, who reported that several valuables had gone missing from her bedroom. She explained to police that she had recently been to the hospital, where she experienced severe dizziness and nausea, with occasional loss of consciousness. Even after returning home, she continued to appear distracted. During the investigation, the police conducted a detailed interrogation of Olga. She recalled a recent troubling encounter with a client named Victoria Nasirova, who came to her home and insisted on urgent eyelash extensions. Victoria had been in contact with the salon before and often acted as if she and Olga were friends. However, on that day, Victoria asked to come to Olga's home to get eyelash extensions. Olga explained that she only worked at the salon and did not accept home customers, but Victoria deliberately ignored her explanation and insisted on urgent eyelash extensions, and Olga finally agreed. Olga later told the police that Victoria had tried to ask her out several times, but she had refused. Another notable detail was that Victoria looked very similar to Olga, which often made Olga feel uncomfortable. During the investigation, it was discovered that Victoria had shown up at Olga's apartment with 3 pieces of cheesecake from the best local bakery. Victoria ate 2 and insisted that Olga have a third, to which Olga eventually agreed. After a brief tea party with cheesecakes, Olga felt unwell. Once Victoria left, Olga became extremely nauseous and lost consciousness for about 30 minutes. When she woke up, she called 911 and was taken to the hospital by ambulance. However, the doctors found nothing wrong in her blood tests. Upon returning home, Olga discovered that some of her valuables were missing and reported the theft to the police. Police were initially skeptical of her story, suspecting that Olga may have been under the influence of drugs, which were causing her to hallucinate. Her unusual behavior and appearance contributed to their suspicions. Police concluded that her account of the incident, including her reference to a woman who resembled her, was likely fabricated. Olga firmly denied using drugs and presented her argument convincingly. She believed that her issues stemmed from a piece of cheesecake she had eaten, suggesting it might have been poisoned. The police quickly inspected the scene and discovered a box from a local bakery in the trash. Olga identified the box as the cheesecake Victoria had brought. The police collected it as evidence because it still had crumbs left inside. Analysis of the cheesecake could determine whether it was the cause of Olga's problems. The examination of the cheesecake revealed no abnormalities. Despite this, the Olga insisted that the dessert was the reason for her illness. She mentioned that she had visited the hospital, where doctors examined her but found nothing unusual. In response to inquiries about her condition and the tests conducted, police contacted the hospital. However, the doctors declined to share information due to privacy policies. The police interpreted this refusal as further evidence to doubt the Olga's claims. Additionally, they could not locate the client mentioned by Olga, leading to a postponement of the case until more information becomes available. A neighbor provided details after noticing a suspicious woman near Olga's apartment the following day. The woman appeared several times, lingering around Olga's apartment until she encountered the neighbor. The strange woman said that her friend Olga was sick and then left in a hurry. Concerned, the neighbor noticed that Olga's apartment door was open and decided to check on her. When she entered, the neighbor found the apartment uncomfortably hot, with the heating system on full blast despite the hot summer weather. Olga was alive but unconscious in bed, dressed strangely, in a revealing bra and sweatpants. The police felt that someone had deliberately changed her clothes. Scattered around her were powerful pills, suggesting that Olga may have taken them with the intention of ending her life. The neighbor quickly called 911, describing the strange woman as dark-haired, attractive, and very similar to Olga. After receiving new information, the police were convinced that the woman who resembled Olga was real, and not a figment of Olga's imagination. Therefore, the police intensified their efforts to investigate the case. The police suspected that Victoria Nasirova, who was involved in a cheesecake in the previous case, was involved in this case. The police began searching for Victoria, but they had no clues or even any photos of her. However, a private investigator, who had been monitoring Victoria's activities for a long time, tracked Victoria down on the internet and contacted the police. He located Victoria where she was advertising her escort services on a dating website and social media. The private investigator suspected that she used these platforms to find victims for her crimes. Her methods were effective. Victoria would meet her victims, drug them with psychotropic substances to render them unconscious, and then steal their valuables. Meanwhile, Olga eventually recovered from her traumatic experience. After leaving the hospital, she shared her story of poisoning on social media. Soon after, one of her clients mentioned a man named Ruben Barakov who had gone through a similar situation. Ruben owned a dry cleaning business and had met a woman named Victoria on a Russian dating site a few months before Olga suffered cheese poisoning. Victoria had invited Ruben to her home, bragging about her cooking skills. He accepted the invitation, but as soon as he tasted her food, he passed out. Victoria then rummaged through his pockets, taking an expensive watch, cash, and cards. Ruben was under the influence of a powerful psychoactive substance and truly believed that it had nearly killed him. Victoria then took him to a dry cleaner's. She explained to Ruben's colleagues that he was drunk and she left. When Ruben regained consciousness, he realized that he had been robbed. The private investigator suspected the situation was much more serious and that the two victims were lucky to be alive. In 2017, he worked with a client from Russia who asked him to help track down a dangerous criminal. Nadia Ford contacted the private investigator after her biological mother, Alla Alexienko, went missing. Nadia currently lives in New York, USA, but was born in Russia. Nadia, who is from Krasnodar, was raised by her mother, Alla, who worked hard to provide for her children. Nadia had dreamed of living in the United States since she was a child, and her dream came true when she came to study in America in 2007. While there, she met a man, married him, and took his last name, Ford. However, their marriage did not last, and they eventually divorced. Nadia chose to stay in the United States and successfully built her life there. She kept a close relationship with her mother, Alla, who was living alone at the time. Alla sold her house and then moved to a new apartment. In early 2013, after moving into a new apartment, Alla had a new neighbor named Victoria Nasirova. Despite the significant age difference, Victoria quickly became friends with Alla. Alla shared stories about her daughter's life in the United States, which sparked Victoria's interest in visiting America and meeting Nadia. Alla then arranged for them to meet. In September 2013, Victoria went to New York, where she met Nadia and they became close friends. Nadia was a kind and pleasant woman. Victoria sought her advice on how to stay in the United States, and Nadia shared a few tips. However, Victoria's plans did not work out, and she eventually returned to Russia. Despite this, she maintained a close relationship with Alla. In the fall of 2014, Victoria planned another trip to the United States, and she told Alla that she could help send gifts to Nadia. Trusting Victoria, Alla happily agreed. Alla then brought $6,000 in cash and valuables, including 2 expensive mink coats, to send to Nadia. Victoria then repeatedly postponed her trip to the United States for various reasons, leaving Alla worried about whether she would actually go and what would happen to her gifts. Worried, Alla called her daughter Nadia to express her concerns. Nadia reassured her mother and suggested that she ask Victoria to return her belongings. On October 4, 2014, Alla called Nadia with the good news that she had finally spoken to Victoria, who agreed to return her valuables. However, this never happened, and Alla soon disappeared. Nadia kept calling her mother, but she didn't answer. This was unusual, since they were in contact every day. Worried, Nadia contacted Victoria to ask about her mother. Victoria confirmed that she had seen Alla, and they had talked and had tea together. Victoria then left, never saw Alla again. Victoria mentioned that Alla was planning to go somewhere, but she didn't know where. Victoria also tried to contact Alla, and even visited Alla's apartment to check on her, but there was no sign of her mother being home. Alla was still unreachable. After a few days, Nadia and her brother received a number of unusual text messages from an unknown number, supposedly from their mother Alla. The messages stated that there was no need to look for her because she was happy. However, the way the messages were written was inconsistent with Alla's style, which raised their concerns. Nadia realized that something was definitely wrong and decided to book the next flight to Russia to assist in the investigation into her mother's disappearance. Upon arriving in Krasnodar, Nadia went to her mother's apartment, but it was stripped of valuables that Victoria was supposed to return. There was no trace of her mother. Concerned, Nadia quickly contacted the police and reported her mother's disappearance. She informed the police about her suspicions regarding Victoria, a neighbor of her mother who had become suspiciously close to her and failed to return Alla belongings. It soon became clear that Victoria had a motive to harm Alla. The police were interested in the information and devised a plan. Nadia called Victoria and pressed Victoria for information about her mother's whereabouts. Victoria, angered by Nadia's questions, shouted that her mother was still alive, but Victoria did not know where she was. The police, who had been listening in on the call, decided to approach Victoria. At her home, she successfully convinced the police that she was not involved and claimed that Nadia's accusations were baseless, with no evidence against her. Meanwhile, Nadia returned to her mother's apartment to investigate. She noticed that the place was surprisingly clean, with no dust, as if it had just been thoroughly cleaned, despite her mother's absence for several days. This raised questions for Nadia. Who could have cleaned the apartment? Additionally, she discovered that several valuable items, including jewelry and $50,000 in cash, were missing. Concerned, Nadia decided to report this to the police. The police, after speaking with Victoria, tried to persuade her that her mother had taken the money and jewelry on a trip and would be back soon. However, Nadia did not buy this explanation. She sensed that her mother was in danger and that it had something to do with Victoria. Nadia reached out to all her mother's friends and relatives, but no one knew where her mother was. In her desperation, Nadia printed flyers with her mother's photo and posted them all over the neighborhood. She also drove around the city, visiting her mother's favorite places, but her efforts were unproductive. Nadia contacted Victoria, begging her to return her mother and expressing her willingness to do anything, even offer a reward. However, Victoria denied any involvement. Despite this, Nadia remained hopeful that her mother was still alive and continued to search. She regularly went to the police for updates, but there was no information about her mother. Determined to find answers, Nadia hired a private investigator. After investigating, the private investigator discovered that Victoria had rented a car from a service center on the day Alla went missing. He checked the car's information and reviewed surveillance camera footage from October 5, 2014. The videos show a car driving on a highway outside the city. There were two people inside, Victoria, who was driving, and Alla Alexenko, motionless in the front passenger seat. She shared this information with the police, who confirmed that Victoria had rented the car and brought her in for questioning. Victoria admitted that she had driven the rental car that morning, October 5, but she denied that there was anyone else in the car with her. Victoria agreed to take a lie detector test. After completing the test, she was released, but the results later showed that she had failed, leading the police to consider her a prime suspect in the case. Before the police could arrest her, Victoria fled the country without notifying the police. They began searching for Victoria. Nadia remained in Russia for another 6 months to assist in the investigation, holding out hope that her mother was still alive. She also contacted Interpol for help in finding Victoria. Police traced the rental car to a dense forest in Armavir, which turned out to be Victoria's hometown. This is where the search for Alla began. Nadia's hopes of her mother's safe return were dashed in April 2015, when police informed her of the tragic news. Her charred remains were found in the same forest, about a 3-hour drive from where Alla went missing. Nadia was able to identify her mother through her dental records, as the rest of her body was badly burned and unrecognizable. The cause of death could not be determined. Following the identification, an arrest warrant was issued for Victoria Nasirova, and her case was referred to Interpol. After her mother's funeral in Krasnodar, Nadia returned to the United States. She found it difficult to cope with her mother's death and was unable to work for a long period. Eventually, she gathered her strength and made a promise to her mother that she would seek justice and ensure that those responsible for Alla's death would be punished. One day, Nadia discovered a photo of Victoria on social media. The wanted woman was showing off her lavish lifestyle in Mexico. After discovering this, Nadia contacted the U.S. police to report Victoria's whereabouts, and they began an investigation. At this point, Nadia hired one of the top private detectives in the United States to speed up the investigation. A wealthy friend of Nadia covered the cost of the detective's services, which she could not afford since she had not been working for several months while searching for her mother. The private detective thoroughly examined Victoria's social media photos and was able to confirm that she was already in the U.S. One of the selfies, taken while wearing sunglasses, showed a reflection of a car's dashboard. After examining hundreds, even thousands of cars, the private investigator determined it was a Chrysler 300. The private investigator was able to determine that the last photos were taken in Sheepshead Bay, a neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York. By checking a database of cars in that area, he was able to narrow down his search and identify a suspect. He discovered that Victoria was living with her boyfriend in an apartment complex just 5 blocks from Nadia, and that the Chrysler was registered to her new boyfriend. Victoria was probably unaware that the case had escalated to the point where Interpol had a global warrant for her arrest, which is why she felt safe posting her photos online. The private investigator located the boyfriend and contacted him. It was discovered that he had been poisoned by Victoria. She followed her usual methods of poisoning her boyfriend and even poisoned his beagle, which unfortunately died. Victoria's freedom poses a danger, as her potential victims could increase. The police searched Victoria's apartment and discovered Olga Tsvik's identity card. This discovery sheds light on why Olga was targeted by Victoria. Victoria needed money and valuables, but she also needed an ID that. With her temporary visa about to expire, she was looking to use someone else's ID to avoid returning to Russia, where she would have to stand trial. Police believe she intended to kill Olga, the real owner of the passport, to steal their identity. Fortunately, Olga survived thanks to the quick action of a neighbor. Additionally, the box containing the remains of the cheesecake was sent for analysis, marking a significant breakthrough in the investigation. The investigation returned to the lab, where researchers analyzed the cheesecake. It was determined that Victoria had used a sedative, but she had used a higher dose, which rendered her victims unconscious. Olga was lucky to survive after eating the cheesecake. The high temperature in her apartment was no accident. Heat amplifies the effects of the drug and can even be fatal. Victoria apparently knew this, so she increased the temperature in the house and tried to dress Olga in warmer clothes. But luckily, Olga was discovered by neighbors in time. After her arrest, Victoria denied all allegations against her, including the murder of Alla, who was Nadia's mother. She also rejected claims that she attempted to murder Olga Tsvik and other victims. Victoria had previously been a suspect in the theft of 2 fur items in May 2016, but that case did not progress. Additional incidents emerged involving her in thefts, where she would meet men online, visit their homes, drug them, and rob them. Most of the men chose not to report these crimes to the police due to concerns about publicity, allowing Victoria to evade consequences. The trial was delayed for a long time. The case finally went to court in January 2023, attracting considerable media and public attention. Victoria chose not to testify at the trial and remained silent. The court could not discuss the details of Allah's death because it happened in another country. Victoria's defense argued that there was no evidence that Victoria had poisoned the cheesecake and forced Olga to eat it. Victoria herself ate 2 pieces in front of Olga and had no problems. The prosecution then argued that Victoria had only added poison to 1 piece of cheesecake, specifically the 3rd piece she offered Olga. She ate the other 2 pieces without the poison. This misled Olga. After a lengthy deliberation, the jury found Victoria Nasirova guilty of 2nd-degree murder. Although the maximum sentence for the crime is 25 years, the judge shortened her sentence to 21 years. By law, she could apply for parole after serving 15 years. Victoria faced harsh prison life. She frequently complained about poor food and inadequate medical care. During her incarceration, she was attacked, leaving her scarred and nearly blind. After the attack, Victoria sued the prison, alleging that guards were negligent in failing to support her. The case ended in a $325,000 settlement. In a recent interview from prison, Victoria denied any wrongdoing, including Allah's murder. She claimed that she had nothing to do with poisoning beautician Olga with the cheesecake, explaining that she had eaten the cheesecake herself and had not become ill. Victoria said that she had only shared a piece of cheesecake with Olga and had not forced her to eat it. After completing her prison sentence in the United States, Victoria will be deported to Russia, where she will face trial for Allah's murder. Her daughter Nadia said she was relieved that Victoria was in prison and would not be able to escape justice. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Graciela Garcia. Graciela Garcia was born on October 6, 1971, in Mexico. Her family was working class and they hoped to provide a better future for their children. As a result, her parents decided to move to the United States and eventually settled in Hermiston, Oregon. Graciela was too young to remember the hardships of the move. She attended Umatilla High School, a low-cost school where 66% of the student body was Hispanic. Graciela made friends easily and stood out with her outgoing. She later studied business at Blue Mountain College. However, since she was young, she has had a passion for hairdressing and has had the goal of owning her own hair salon. With passion and hard work, Graciela believed that her plans could come true with the right approach. By February 2006, she had become the owner of Car's Beauty Salon. Thanks to her talent and charisma, she quickly became famous in society. Moreover, her professional image also contributed to the prestige of the salon. She is passionate about her work and has a deep understanding of new beauty trends. Thanks to that, she always has a loyal customer base. Some of her customers have become close friends and are often invited to her home. She is respected and loved by everyone in town. Her private life is also filled with joy and happiness. She was pursued by many men when she was young, but she only loved one. That man became her first love. They have 2 beautiful daughters, Annabelle and Gabriella, often called Gabby. However, that love did not last long. The man left the family. It seems that his feelings for her faded over time. Despite becoming a single mother, she did not feel hopeless. Instead, she focused on self-improvement and pursued a degree in cosmetology. After her divorce, Graciela met Romero Sanchez, a regular customer at the beauty salon where she worked. At first, their relationship was just a friendship. However, Romero later asked Graciela out, and she accepted. Gradually, their relationship became closer and deeper. However, when Graciela introduced Romero to her family, they felt uncomfortable because of his cold and distant attitude. Annabelle and Gabby, Graciela's two daughters, tried many times to connect with Romero, but he did not respond. Graciela's children were confused by such behavior, but they attributed it to personality differences. Graciela's partner seemed to be a strange and unapproachable person, which puzzled the people around her. They could not believe that a woman as full of life and fun as her could be so passionately in love with such a dry person. However, they still respected her decision. When Graciela announced her upcoming marriage, everyone showed their support and shared her joy. Especially Annabelle and Gabby, they wanted to see her happy and loved. On the wedding day, guests also noticed Romero's arrogance and conceit. Some thought he seemed too jealous when trying to steal all the bride's attention. When Graciela's young grandchildren came to congratulate the newlyweds, Romero treated them with contempt, making them feel uncomfortable. Afterwards, Graciela's relatives could not hide their true feelings about this man. Annabelle even openly stated that she did not consider him a stepfather and just wanted to maintain a normal relationship like other families. After the wedding, the Graciela family had two more sons, Arthur and Jacob. They moved in together at Graciela's house. Graciela's youngest son, Jacob, noticed that Romero began to act as if he were the sole owner of the house. Initially, Graciela tried to set personal boundaries, but because she did not like confrontation, she quickly gave in to Romero. He was hot-tempered and never gave in or apologized first. To avoid creating tension in the family, Graciela continued to give in to Romero. However, over time, Graciela began to realize that she had rushed into this marriage. In conversations with her relatives, Graciela confessed that she felt constrained and oppressed. Her husband controlled her and did not let her go anywhere alone. Despite this, Graciela never said she wanted to leave this abusive relationship. It seems she still loves him. Graciela's family gradually realized that she had become attached to the wrong man. Romero not only controlled Graciela but also lived off of his wife, much to her family's dismay. Romero was a skilled manipulator, constantly stalking Graciela, controlling her correspondence, and even threatening to break up the friendship between Graciela and her friends. He did not want to let her go anywhere, or sometimes he would show up unexpectedly, as if testing her loyalty. His jealousy became excessive and uncontrollable. She felt ashamed and self-conscious because of his behavior, and as a result, she limited her social life. She only communicated with her family and no longer connected with friends or colleagues as before. This seriously affected her work, as her profession required her to communicate regularly with clients and attend various events. Her friends and colleagues noticed a change in Graciela. She was no longer the cheerful and bright woman she used to be. She looked sad and tired, and she was clearly unhappy. Her children also noticed that she had changed in both her mood and appearance. They saw that she had lost her independence and confidence. After discussing it with each other, Graciela's family agreed that they did not like Romero. However, since he was Graciela's choice, there was not much they could do to change the situation. They could only respect her decision. Other relatives also expressed doubts about Romero, but no one knew how to help her in this situation. Graciela and Romero needed help with their relationship, and Gabby had mentioned this to her mother. However, Graciela believed that she would manage her personal life on her own. In 2018, Graciela decided to move her salon to her home for convenience. However, her family was skeptical as they had not heard about the plan for 12 years. Some customers commented that Romero's constant presence at the salon made them feel uncomfortable. Some people thought that Graciela moved the salon home to solve the problem, but others doubted that the idea came from Romero. However, Graciela was happy about the change and believed that working from home would bring her closer to Jacob and Romero. At the end of the year, she and her husband renovated a room into a beauty salon, completing it in May 2019. The salon closed shortly after, but Graciela's reputation remained intact, and rumors of her reopening attracted many customers, including new ones. Graciela was delighted with her career success, but became increasingly secretive about her personal life. However, after 17 years of marriage, Graciela and Romero decided to separate. Romero always kept in touch with their children and saw them regularly. Graciela and her ex-husband shared custody of their youngest son, while the other children were grown and living on their own, but they still kept in regular contact with their family and participated in family activities. Graciela went through the divorce with a calm and optimistic attitude. After the divorce, Graciela focused on developing her beauty salon and spent her free time taking care of her family and close friends. On the morning of November 9, 2019, Romero visited Graciela's eldest daughter, Annabelle, and reported Graciela missing. According to Romero, Graciela and he had been together the night before. However, when he woke up the next morning, he was surprised to find that she was no longer there. Romero tried to contact Graciela but received no response. Annabelle was shocked by the news and Romero's reaction. He cried and appeared distressed. This made Annabelle feel strange because Romero usually did not show emotions in front of them. Romero also said that Graciela had been acting strangely recently, even hinting that she might have found another man in her life. Annabelle felt that Romero's words were insincere and his tears seemed fake, which made her start to doubt his behavior and worry about her mother. Romero usually avoided communicating with his wife's children. But after a while, he changed and decided to connect with them. After Romero left, Annabelle decided to inform the rest of the family about what had happened. Graciela's family gathers to find out what's happening to her. Graciela's car was parked in the driveway. If she decided to leave Romero, she would definitely use her own car. Another thing that surprised them was the neatness of Graciela's house. Everything was perfectly arranged and in order, far beyond normal. However, this was completely contrary to Graciela's personality and lifestyle, because if she went somewhere, her belongings and accessories would be scattered all over the room. Normally, Graciela would spend a lot of time in front of the mirror choosing her outfit for the day. However, the fact that she went out without any jewelry worried the whole family and they wondered why. As she walked around the house, Gabby noticed something strange. The large blanket had been put in the washing machine, something her mother never did. The blanket was too heavy and someone else had washed it, apparently Romero, which made Gabby suspicious. Romero did not explain this, saying that he did not pay attention to such details. But then people realized that several important items were missing from the house, including Graciela's passport, driver's license, and cell phone. This raised further suspicions about Romero's actions. On November 11th, Annabelle contacted law enforcement at the police station and discovered something surprising. Although Romero had known about his wife's disappearance since the 9th or possibly earlier, he had not notified the police. Therefore, Annabelle was the first to file a missing persons report to her mother. Another incident raised concerns about Graciela's safety. She asked Gabby to pick her up, but even though Gabby said it would take some time because of the distance, Graciela continued to ask. Gabby was surprised by this unexpected request for help. Graciela explained that everything was fine and that her request was just a result of an argument with Romero. When they met, Graciela appeared relaxed, smiling and asking her daughter not to worry. She believed that arguments between lovers were just a form of renewal in their relationship. However, after they broke up, Gabby remained uneasy and became increasingly worried about her mother. The investigation began after Annabelle contacted the police. This caused the relationship between Graciella's family and Romero to deteriorate. Romero seemed angry that Graciella's family had notified law enforcement about her disappearance. Romero gave an official statement about his wife's disappearance. He said that Graciella either wanted to be alone or that she had moved in with another man and would be back soon. That was his answer every time someone asked. However, the police did not ignore this report. Officers launched an investigation into the missing Graciella's disappearance, considering the possibility that she may have been a victim of a crime. They started by searching her house, where her relatives reported that only a few personal items were missing. Without finding any other suspicious signs, the investigation expanded to include interviews with her children, Romero, and other close family members, including her ex-husband. However, no useful information was gathered from these interviews. While everyone expressed doubts about Romero's behavior, he cooperated fully with the detectives, allowing them to search his home, answering questions, providing his DNA, and taking a polygraph test. Despite this cooperation, there was insufficient evidence to prove his involvement in the case. Further investigation revealed that Graciella's phone last sent a signal near a bridge in Washington on November 9 at 12:30 p.m. After that, her phone was turned off. Her bank accounts and social media accounts showed no activity, suggesting that she had not accessed since her disappearance. Hundreds of witnesses were questioned, and all the places she regularly visited were checked, but no one had any information about her whereabouts. The investigators found her disappearance to be highly suspicious, as it seemed she had vanished without leaving any clues. For months into the investigation, the Hermiston Police Department announced that they had found no reliable information about Graciella's last whereabouts. Although Romero had not reported her missing, he was not accused of any wrongdoing. Graciella's family became increasingly frustrated with the lack of progress despite their constant contact with authorities throughout the incident. However, as time passed, these updates became less frequent and eventually stopped, forcing Graciella's children to take initiative and contact the police station themselves to inquire about the status of the case. In an effort to reinvigorate the search, Graciella's family turned to the media in March 2020, seeking public assistance and attention. They hoped that by sharing their story, they might gather new information. Graciella's daughter Gabby was mainly in charge of communicating with the press. She expressed her family's increasing frustration with the lack of progress in the case and criticized the police for not keeping them informed for such a long time. She urged investigators to focus more on finding her mother, Graciella, and to take a closer look at the suspicious circumstances surrounding disappearance. Graciella's family suspected something was wrong, as the condition of her belongings was strange and unusual in her home. However, it was unclear who would want to harm her, as Graciella did not appear to have any enemies. The family also believed that Graciella would not have left on her own, as she would have contacted them to reassure. Posters and flyers describing Graciella were scattered throughout the city in search of clues to the case. Graciella, who is 49 years old, Latina, 1.6 meters tall, 62 kilograms, and with dyed blonde hair. Local residents were also asked to be vigilant and report any information that might help the investigation. Her children were so concerned that they asked for a new detective team to take over the case, as they suspected bias in collaboration with a suspect, Romero, who was acquainted with the original investigators. The Graciella family expressed concerns about several inconsistencies in the investigation, including the fact that Romero's phone was turned off on the day of Graciella's disappearance. Additionally, Romero's calm behavior raised suspicions, as it didn't with the typical reaction expected from someone whose loved one has suddenly gone missing. As a result, the Graciella family demanded that the suspect be arrested immediately. Police Chief Jason Edmiston responded to allegations surrounding Graciela's disappearance, confirming that her case is being treated as suspicious and possibly involving foul play. However, he emphasized that this is just one theory and that the investigation remains impartial, driven by evidence. Edmiston also dismissed claims of social connections between Romero and law enforcement as baseless. Edmiston noted that the spread of misinformation has hindered the investigation. Certain information must be kept confidential, and authorities have sought assistance from the FBI. The police chief expressed frustration over public criticism of the police's actions. Separately, Gabby organized a fundraiser to hire a private detective, a move seen as a critique of the police's handling of the investigation. This perceived criticism suggested that the police were not doing enough to find Graciela. 1 year after Graciela disappeared, her family organized a memorial gathering. Here, friends and people who knew her shared stories about her lively and cheerful personality. They prayed for her safe return, lit candles, and later placed signs outside the police station, urging authorities to continue the search for Graciela Garcia. In September 2023, a major development in the case occurred when Romero Sanchez was severely injured in an attack and that required surgery. There was speculation that the shooter was Mason Garcia, Graciela's brother. The attack suggests that Graciela's family had become frustrated with the lack of progress in the investigation and took matters into their own hands, potentially leading to further tragedy. The disappearance of Graciela Garcia remains an unsolved mystery, leaving her family in a state of agonizing. This has significantly affected the health and mental well-being of her family. Living without knowing what happened to a loved one can be more challenging than coping with a confirmed loss. It remains unknown whether Graciela is alive or not. Her children continue to hope that the truth will soon be revealed and justice will be served to the criminals. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Channon Starbuck. Channon was born on April 19, 1969, in Anderson, Indiana. She was the youngest child in her family and grew up with 2 older brothers. However, her life changed dramatically when her parents divorced and remarried, giving her more siblings. From a young age, Channon dreamed of having a large and loving family of her own. She often participated in church activities and had a deep faith, which reinforced her dream. Channon grew up in a simple and friendly environment. She had a passion for painting and won many awards. When she was 20, she met Clay Starbuck, a 25-year-old man. They met at a party in Florida, where Channon had moved with her family when she was a child. Clay Starbuck, originally from Alaska, came to Florida during his vacation. During their first meeting, Channon learned a lot about Clay, including that he had attended a diesel mechanic school in Colorado after high school. He then returned home to work on the Trans-Alaska Pipeline and was financially stable. However, Channon also learned that Clay was married and had 2 children from that marriage. Despite this, she was not discouraged by his complicated past. Instead, she saw it as a positive thing, believing that it gave him valuable experience for his married life. After getting married, Channon and Clay moved in together. In the new place, Channon had to overcome many difficulties related to the environment and weather, but she eventually adapted and settled down. However, married life was not as perfect as Channon had planned. Channon and Clay were often apart because of Clay's work, but their love helped her overcome her loneliness and wait for the day they could reunite. During that time, she cared for Clay's children from his previous marriage and had more children. In 1996, the Starbucks family welcomed their son Austin, followed by his brother Blake 3 years later. When their daughter Logan was born, the family was even more excited. However, Logan was soon diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, adding to the challenges of family life. Shannon had to deal with Logan's illness and try to support her daughter. She became a more caring and nurturing mother to her children. She spent time on health care, education, and community activities. But while she focused on raising her family, she did not realize that her husband was having an affair at work. As time passed, the Starbuck family continued to grow, and Shannon welcomed another daughter, Serena. Despite the hardships of life, she still tried to keep her family happy. But her husband's secret eventually came to light, and it would change her life forever. In 2000, Shannon filed for divorce after experiencing a great shock and feeling deeply betrayed. However, she still had feelings for Clay and decided to move to Arizona to start a new life. This attempt failed because she still loved Clay. When Clay contacted her and begged her to come back, Shannon believed that he had repented and decided to give him a second chance. In 2001, Shannon and Clay welcomed their fifth child, Marshall. However, Marshall's birth created new disagreements. Even an official remarriage in 2006 could not save their broken relationship. After the remarriage, the family moved to Deer Park in Spokane County, Washington. Clay continued to work at his previous job, which led to him being away from home often. Shannon had to manage her family and children on her own. However, suspicion continued to poison their marriage, which was affected by the long separations and breakups that occurred during their relationship. Finally, in 2010, Shannon and Clay divorced for good. When she turned 40, Shannon decided to rebuild her life once again. She still hoped that she could experience the joy of love. She was also determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Even when Clay was seriously injured, she chose not to get back together with him. Instead, she chose to support her ex-husband and provide help when needed. In February 2011, Clay quit his job and decided to settle down permanently in Deer Park. This brought him closer to his children and also closer to Shannon. However, he still hoped that Shannon would come back to him, but Shannon did not share the same views. After finding freedom, Shannon enjoyed her new life. Austin and Blake then moved in with their father, and they were happy to be away from their mother's constant supervision. Shannon found a part-time job and enrolled in a dental assistant course after her divorce. She had to take care of her family and provide for her children, especially when her ex-husband stopped paying child support due to illness. However, she still had another man to support her in case of emergency. Her children often stayed with this man every Wednesday and on the second and fourth weekends of the month. After completing the course and receiving her certificate, Shannon was proud and began to pursue a new dream. She created a profile on a dating website, hoping to meet a man who was worthy and could help her forget her past. She still regretted spending so many years with Clay, a man who did not appreciate her. However, one morning in December 2011, her dream was suddenly ended. On December 2, 2011, the police were notified that Shannon was unreachable. Her ex-husband, Clay Starbuck, was the first to report. He reported that he had not been able to contact his ex-wife since December 1 around 3 p.m. Shannon had texted her daughter that she could not pick them up from school because she was not feeling well and asked her father to pick them up. However, his phone was turned off, so he did not know about her text. The two children, Marshall and Serena, were tired and hungry. As a result, Logan, 15, decided to call his brother and ask him to drive them to their father's house, which was a few blocks away. When they arrived, Austin said he had not been able to contact his mother either. She may have turned off her phone to rest and recover. Austin took the children to Clay's house. Clay was not expecting them but was very happy to see his children again. After the divorce, the older children lived with him, while the three youngest children lived with their mother. So the father decided to enjoy his time with his children and not bother Shannon. On December 2nd, Clay drove the children to school and went to Shannon's house. However, the front door was locked and the blinds were drawn. Since he did not have a spare key, he could not enter the house. Clay then sent a text message saying that if Shannon did not show up by 7 p.m., he would contact law enforcement. Time passed without Clay receiving a response from Shannon, so he went to the police and reported the situation. 2 sheriffs went to the address provided but did not see anything suspicious and returned. The sheriff suggested waiting another day, and if she had not contacted him by then, he should return. Frustrated, Clay went home and waited for news. The next day, Clay went to the police station again. This time, the police told him that he was not the only one reported missing. A friend and Shannon's mother were also unable to contact her. This did not fit her personality. This time, the police took a more serious approach to the case. Many of Shannon's relatives began to worry. After receiving the necessary permission, the police returned to Shannon's house to investigate. When they arrived, the police broke the lock and entered. Initially, they saw no signs of forced entry or robbery. Everything seemed to be in its place. However, when they entered Shannon's bedroom, they discovered an unexpected detail: a broken statue. Then came the horrifying scenes. Shannon, 42, was found lying on her back on the floor of her bedroom in a provocative pose. On her stomach was an erotic massage tool. She had hoped for a better future, but fate did not give her the chance to fulfill her dream. Shannon's body was covered in bruises and scratches. The medical examiner's report showed that some of the injuries on her body were caused by a stun gun. There was also evidence that her body had been moved. Shannon's cause of death was strangulation. It was the detective's job to figure out Shannon's last hours and find the culprit. The police realized that Shannon Starbuck had not only disappeared but had also been brutally murdered. Her room looked as if it had been turned upside down. The bed was unmade, the blankets and sheets were missing, and the mattress cover was stained red. Shannon's cell phone and diary were on the dresser. Forensic experts focused on this room and examined all surfaces for fingerprints. Some surfaces had been wiped clean, but they found 12 latent fingerprints on the massager and the bathroom mirror. They also found many other traces in common areas for DNA analysis. Experts took samples from under Shannon's fingernails on her face and neck. Detectives suspect that Shannon was killed after she left the bathroom, then placed on the bed, and finally dragged to the floor. It is worth noting that the removed bed sheets were found in the washing machine, possibly intended to destroy evidence. The detectives needed to gather information about Shannon and her lifestyle. So, after the ex-husband calmed down, they questioned him. Clay explained that he and his ex-wife had an arrangement regarding child pickup and drop-off. Every morning, he picked up the younger kids and took them to school, and she picked them up after school. Clay said that on the morning of December 1st, his car broke down a few blocks from home. So he texted Shannon, asking her to take the kids to school. He then went home to wait for the car to warm up, thinking that would help it start. Around 11 a.m., he tried to restart the car but was unsuccessful. He gave up and went back inside to take a nap. During that time, his cell phone battery died. To back up his claim, he showed his correspondence with his ex-wife. At first, everything made sense. Furthermore, Clay was very cooperative, handing over his cell phone, DNA sample, and fingerprints. He also confessed that he was worried about Shannon because the divorce had made her more vulnerable. In addition, he shared that because she was single, Shannon had registered on a dating website and had many admirers. According to Clay, it is possible that Shannon had several lovers at the same time. He believes that one of them may have caused her death. However, he could not name them specifically due to a lack of information. During the conversation, Clay sobbed. He explained that accepting the death of his ex-lover was very difficult. After taking his statement, the police let Clay go home. He was faced with informing his children about Shannon's death. The case involving Shannon Starbuck's death has attracted public attention. Investigators interviewed the Starbucks neighbors, focusing on details, especially reports of strange people and vehicles appearing outside her home in recent weeks. An autopsy was performed, and the report found that Starbucks suffered chest injuries consistent with the use of a stun gun. She also suffered 10 broken ribs. The injuries to her head and body were severe and likely caused by a blunt object. Because of the appearance of the injuries, it was difficult to determine the exact time of death. Scratch marks on her body indicated that she had been moved after she was killed. The medical examiner's report indicated that a soft object was used to strangle her, possibly a hand, a towel, or a sheet. A key clue in the case came from the body samples collected, including the DNA of a man, suggesting that the suspect may have been a close acquaintance of hers. Shannon's family hopes the police will quickly find the culprit. Shannon's ex-husband, Clay Starbuck, has cooperated fully with the investigation. He underwent a physical examination to look for any signs of injury on his body, but none were found. As detectives speculated that the culprit may have been injured during the struggle, there was no evidence of that. Shannon's two sons, Austin, 21, and Blake, 18, were also examined. Austin had old cuts on his hands, but he explained that these cuts were from his job at a window factory. In conversations with the two brothers, detectives established some important facts. They learned that their mother often dated men after the divorce, which made them unhappy. The brothers also said they had seen intimate photos on their mother's laptop, which led them to suspect that their mother may have been murdered by a lover. However, it was clear that they both loved their mother and were deeply saddened by her passing. Nonetheless, they did not agree with the changes in her life. In a later interview, Clay was more specific. He said Shannon caused discord in the family when he was away on business. She often met other men, and he even suspected that Marshall might not be his son. However, he still loved Marshall like his own son. He did not agree with some of Shannon's actions, especially the fact that she often brought the children to his house when she went on dates. However, investigators gained a personal view of Shannon and her family after speaking with him, her children, and her relatives and friends. After the investigation, detectives had a complete picture of Shannon in her life. The kindness and concern of those who attended Shannon's funeral on December 10, 2011, showed that she was an intelligent and sincere person. She was buried in a cemetery in Orlando. Investigators quickly searched for the killer after the incident attracted public attention. The suspect at that time was her ex-husband, Clay Starbuck. Police needed to verify his alibi to eliminate him as a suspect. When the first fingerprint results came back, detectives discovered that the fingerprints did not match any at the scene. Therefore, the police needed to gather more information about Clay Starbuck. They also took samples from his cell phone, laptop, and personal diary. At the same time, they also considered the possibility that other people were involved in the murder. After a thorough examination of Starbuck's cell phone, detectives added several names to the suspect list. One of them was someone Shannon had connected with through a dating site. They discovered that a man named Tom Walker had scheduled a date with Shannon on December 5th, a few hours before her death. They also discovered that Tom and Shannon had been chatting openly and exchanging photos. Tom had asked Shannon to pose for a photo with an adult toy, but she refused. Interestingly, Shannon's body was later found in the exact pose Tom had mentioned. Tom was found within an hour and immediately became a suspect. He explained his activities on the day of Shannon's death, which was confirmed by coworkers and surveillance cameras. John Wilson then scheduled a date with Shannon on December 1st. It was clear from their correspondence that he was not looking for a serious relationship. However, the truth is that John Wilson used a fake name. His real name is John Kinlawn, who works in a completely different field and is married, so he had to keep it a secret. On the day of the incident, John Kinlawn postponed his morning meeting with Channon until later, citing a headache. In the end, the appointment did not take place. After his DNA sample was taken, he was released. His alibi was confirmed, even though his deception was revealed to his family. The investigation continued, and investigators uncovered some important evidence. When they searched Channon's phone, they asked the carrier for more information and discovered something significant. At 9:18 a.m. on December 1st, a 911 call was made from Channon's phone, but someone had deleted it from the call history. Thanks to a request from emergency services, investigators were able to retrieve the call. However, the call contained only crying and other noises before it was abruptly cut off. Investigators also discovered that after the initial call was unsuccessful, emergency services attempted to call back, but the call went to voicemail. GPS data from Channon's cell phone pinpointed her location at home on the day of her death. Notably, these events occurred after she dropped her children off at school and returned home. Therefore, the messages sent a few hours later could not have been from her. The perpetrator was trying to confuse the investigation. Additionally, this person had a close relationship with the Starbuck family. For example, he used a nickname for their youngest son in his correspondence. Upon closer examination of the information, Clay's statements became even more suspicious. He had a motive to end his ex-wife's life because he could not accept the reality of the divorce. Moreover, he had the perfect opportunity to do this because he knew her daily routine. To clarify the suspicion, the authorities decided to track Clay's car route again, this time using street surveillance camera recordings. The results showed that Clay's car was not broken down as he had claimed. Simultaneously, the results of a second DNA analysis from Channon's body matched exactly with Clay's sample. On the morning of December 1st, Clay sent a text message to his ex-wife, asking her to take the kids to school and saying that his car had broken down. While she was away, he entered her home and waited. During this time, he accessed her laptop and found personal correspondence that made him jealous and angry. When Channon returned home, a heated argument ensued that ended in violence. This explains why she was found in an unusual position. This may have been an act of revenge for her newly gained freedom. Clay then stayed at the house and impersonated Channon in text messages. It seems that he had long intended to harm his ex-wife. The words of a friend of Channon's took on new meaning for detectives. In one conversation, the friend mentioned that Clay and Channon's relationship was not normal. Channon confessed that she was fed up with Clay's constant control and criticism. She was afraid of divorce because she feared that he might one day hurt her. Between June and November 2011, Channon contacted the police several times, accusing her ex-husband of stalking her. She felt unsafe even in her own home and therefore did not trust anyone with a key. She eventually managed to obtain a restraining order against Clay, so their communication was limited to text messages. A careful examination of Channon's diary makes it clear that she was not only afraid of her ex-husband but also believed that he was turning the children against her. Clay fabricated lewd stories and portrayed her as promiscuous. The children's reaction to their father's arrest on February 6, 2012, is therefore not surprising. They refused to believe his involvement. The children were unfazed by the fact that a tracking program was found on Channon's laptop and a hard drive labeled Channon's desktop was found in Clay's home, along with printed correspondence. The older children doubted the authenticity of the DNA analysis, believing that the accusations against their father were unfounded and that the case was fabricated. However, the views of law enforcement and other relatives were different. The prosecution was convinced of Clay's guilt, relying on a large amount of physical and testimonial evidence. In June 2013, justice prevailed, and Clay Starbuck was convicted of first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances and disrespect for human remains. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In 2015, Clay's attorney filed an appeal of the sentence, but it was denied. To this day, Clay remains behind bars at the Airway Heights Correctional Facility in Spokane County. Shannon's loved ones mourn her sudden passing, but their hearts are even more broken by the thought that her children sided with their father. He was so obsessed with his ex-wife that, in his quest for revenge, he forgot the consequences, leaving his children orphaned. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Rosana Galeano. Rosana Galeano was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in the late 1970s to parents Raldo and Graciela. She had two older brothers, Oscar and Gustavo, and a sister, Monica. During this time, Raldo, Rosana's father, worked as a mechanic. In 2001, Jose Arce brought his vintage car to Raldo's workshop for repairs. Jose was born on November 22, 1948. He spent more than 30 years living abroad, primarily in Greece and the United States. During his time in the United States, Jose was convicted of drug trafficking and served a 4-year prison sentence. He returned to Argentina in 1996 and owned 8 properties in a prestigious area of Buenos Aires. Despite their significant age difference, Jose and Rosana began dating shortly after meeting at her father's shop. At the time, Rosana was without a job and kept to herself, while Jose appeared to be financially stable. However, his wealth actually came from his mother, Elsa, who lived in the United States. Jose, who is 52 years old, proposed to Rosana, who is 22 years old. Rosana's mother, Graciela, expressed concerns about their significant age difference. Jose dismissed her worries, claiming that love knows no age. Rosana reassured her mother that she wanted to marry Jose, and they tied the knot on November 17, 2001, after a 7-month courtship. Jose initially thought his friendly and intelligent personality was the reason Rosana was attracted to him. They soon had a son, Geronimo. However, Jose's true nature soon became apparent, a controlling and jealous person. He frequently belittled Rosana and her family, and has eventually turned physically abusive, leaving Rosana feeling trapped and fearful. Jose's ownership of 2 guns added to his intimidating presence, allowing him to maintain control over Rosana. Her family was aware of the situation and the pain it caused. Jose often flaunted his guns in front of visitors or when visiting others. On one occasion, Rosana's brother Oscar witnessed Jose physically assaulting her while they were painting their house. On another occasion, Rosana's father observed bruises on her back, bruises that she explained were caused by Jose dragging her on the ground. Rosana and Jose had their second child, but their relationship continued to deteriorate. Jose's hot temper and lack of respect have repeatedly strained their relationship, making it difficult for her to maintain a healthy home for her children despite her best efforts. The situation was further complicated by Jose's mother, Elsa, who would visit from time to time and exert control over their household decisions. By 2006, Rosana had suffered severe abuse at the hands of Jose and decided to report him to the authorities for domestic violence. A few months later, Rosana filed a second complaint, this time she requesting a medical examination to document her injuries. Rosana opened up to her sister Monica about her struggles, and they made a promise to stay connected and be there for each other whenever Rosana needed assistance. Monica becomes Rosana's rock, comforting and supporting her emotionally during difficult times. Whenever Rosanna visited Monica's apartment with her children, Jose would often dictate when they had to return home, threatening to harm her. He frequently belittled Rosanna, questioning her ability to be a mother. Ultimately, Rosanna decided to leave Jose and move in with Monica, leaving him to stay in their house alone. Rosanna filed another complaint and sought a divorce, which led to a restraining order being issued against Jose. As a result, they were only allowed to meet at a neutral location in El Remanso Exel de la Cruz, as arranged by the court, for Jose to visit their child. During one of her visits, Rosanna confided in Daniel Gonzalez, a married man, who worked as a gardener and lived nearby with his own daughter. Although there were rumors about a relationship between Rosanna and Daniel, this was never confirmed. Meanwhile, Jose continued to make threats against Rosanna, including a disturbing voicemail, in which Jose explicitly threatened to kill her, and she shared this message with her brother Oscar. In 2007, Rosanna met Oscar Lugo at a bar while socializing with friends. He was 32 years old, lived in Marino, and worked in a sewing workshop. They quickly connected, exchanged numbers, and began dating. Oscar was a kind, attentive, and gentleman who listened to Rosanna. At 29 years old, Rosanna felt like she was rediscovering a life she had almost forgotten. However, their budding relationship was soon threatened by Rosanna's ex-husband, Jose. He closely monitored Rosanna's activities and was aware of her new relationship with Oscar. Jose wants to prevent his divorce from Rosanna and is terrified when he hears that Rosanna has started a new relationship. He offers give Rosanna a truck in exchange for ending her relationship with Oscar Lugo, but she refuses. When Rosanna had a severe nervous breakdown, it was Oscar who accompanied her to the hospital. Out of desperation, Jose devised a plan with the help of his mother Elsa. They secretly planned to hire an assassin to kill Rosanna. On January 16, 2008, Rosanna and her sister Monica went to El Reno to pick up Rosanna's two sons, aged 4 and 3, from their father Jose. However, Jose delayed the handover, making excuses. At 9:15 p.m., Jose called Rosanna, claiming their son Geronimo had a fever and that he would take him to the hospital and return him the next day. Rosanna insisted on taking care of Geronimo herself, but the call ended abruptly. Rosanna then sent a casual text message to Oscar Lugo at 9:53 p.m. about their plans for the next day. At 10 p.m., Rosanna and Monica sat down for dinner when Jose called again. This time, Rosanna stepped out into the garden to get better phone reception. Unbeknownst to her, a person was hiding behind the trees. As she was on the phone, the person emerged and shot Rosanna 4 times with a .45 caliber gun. Monica, who was inside, heard the shots and saw Rosanna stumble and collapse. Panicked, Monica tried to call 911 but was unsuccessful. She then asked her boyfriend to alert the police. Meanwhile, Oscar Lugo tried to contact Rosanna at 11 p.m. but couldn't reach her. He then tried to call Monica but got no response. The police investigation revealed that the shooter had entered the property through an adjacent vacant lot. A witness reported seeing someone fleeing through a gap in the fence but couldn't provide a clear description due to the darkness. Jose was questioned by the police and appeared shocked. After requesting a lawyer, he let the lawyer handle the proceedings and left the next day. During a thorough search of the area, a red sweater was discovered that Rosanna's family believed belonged to Jose, which led them to suspect him of the crime. The case quickly gained widespread media attention, shocking the nation and sparking a scandal. Jose and his mother publicly maintained his innocence and criticized Rosanna, claiming that she had multiple sexual partners and that they should be investigated for this crime instead of Jose. Following the incident, Daniel, the gardener, became withdrawn and isolated, refusing to speak to anyone. On the night of Rosanna's funeral, Raldo noticed Jose watching from a distance in a truck, but he did not attend the funeral or offer any condolences. José's defense team then shifted their focus to Monica, who was Roxana's sister and the only witness to the case. They questioned Monica's credibility, pointing out two key inconsistencies in her story. Firstly, Monica did not have any blood on her clothes, which raised suspicions about her account of what happened. Secondly, instead of immediately helping her younger sister, Monica chose to run and get her phone. However, this theory lacked supporting evidence. The investigators presented a strong argument that the murder weapon was too heavy for a woman to handle. They also pointed out that the killer likely knew the house well, as they would have been aware that Roxana had to go outside to get a cell phone signal. This suggests that the crime was planned in advance. During the investigation, Roxana's sons were cared for by their father and paternal grandmother Elsa, and their grandmother Graciela was allowed to visit them. However, Monica and Oscar are not allowed near the children, as José expresses concern for his son's safety. Despite the court's restrictions, the children still wanted to see Aunt Monica, so José allowed them to visit her. During these visits, Monica took the children to see a psychologist. Eventually, Graciela was granted visitation rights to her grandchildren, though not guardianship. In an interview, José made some serious allegations about Roxana, claiming she had 4 lovers who all had run-ins with the law. José suspects Roxana of being involved with these men, and she has been gathering information about them for blackmail. Meanwhile, Oscar was given protection as a witness in his sister's case, which included wearing a tracking device and having a police escort. By the end of 2007, investigators still hadn't found enough evidence to charge any of the suspects. However, a significant turning point occurred in January 2008 when José was arrested and charged with aggravated homicide. This charge was based on 3 key factors: his connection to the victim, evidence that suggested he had planned the crime in advance, and the fact that multiple people were involved in the crime. On January 28, 2008, the preliminary hearings began. At the hearings, 4 people, including Raldo, Graciela, Monica, and Oscar, described José's disturbing behavior, including his repeated use of violence and weapons to threaten others. Roxana's mother also presented the prosecutor with the last text messages her daughter had sent before her death. The following day, Oscar Lugo, who used to date Roxana, testified against José, provided testimony similar to that of Roxana's family. According to Oscar Lugo, José had tried to ruin his and Roxana's reputations by spreading false rumors. Oscar Lugo said Roxana suspected José's fabrications were intended to discredit her as she and José were about to divorce. Opposite, José's lawyer disputed the claims that José was emotionally unstable and aggressive. On February 7, 2008, José's mother, Elsa, traveled from the United States to testify in a 12-hour investigative session. However, Roxana's family began to suspect that José's mother might have been involved in her murder. This suspicion led Raldo and Graciela's lawyer to consider requesting José's mother's arrest. In response, José and his mother's lawyer argued that her testimony actually showed she was prioritizing her grandchildren's well-being. According to Elsa's testimony, she purchased houses for them because she believed the divorce settlement would not negatively impact them. The lawyer also denied the media's claim that José's mother and Roxana had a poor relationship. Despite ongoing speculation and media coverage surrounding the circumstances of Roxana's death, José was released on bail and gained custody of his children. Meanwhile, the court deemed it unnecessary to provide police protection for Oscar, Roxana's brother, who worked as a taxi driver. However, on July 5, 2008, Oscar was attacked by 2 armed men in the early morning. They beat and threatened him for an hour before abandoning him in a vacant lot. Fortunately, Oscar was found thanks to the protective witness tracking bracelet he wore. Oscar was deeply shaken by the event, though not severely injured. The trial next began in April 2013. Jose maintained his innocence throughout the proceedings. However, in May, the trial was delayed when Jose suffered a stroke, pushing the final verdict back to November 2013. The judge determined that the murder was carefully and deliberately planned, bearing the hallmarks of organized crime. The court concluded that Jose and Elsa were involved in planning the attack. They deliberately chose the time and place to put Rosanna in a passive position and unable to defend herself. Specifically, they targeting her after a phone call would lure her outside. The court ultimately determined that Jose's primary motive for the murder was financial, because he did not want to divide the joint property with Rosanna. As a result, Jose and Elsa were sentenced to life imprisonment. The higher court upheld the conviction, emphasizing Jose's threatening behavior, the domestic violence Rosanna suffered, and the significant influence his mother had over him. Years later, in 2015, Jose and Elsa were granted house arrest due to health and age concerns, respectively. This allowed them to be reunited with their children. Throughout this time, the media continued to follow the story of the children. In January 2017, the court allowed the children to spend a weekend with their maternal grandparents for the first time. The Rosanna Galliano family thoroughly prepared their home, repainting and cleaning the house, and decorating it with balloons and a welcome sign. Graciela also cooked the children's favorite meal in anticipation of their arrival. The Rosanna Galliano home was filled with joy that weekend, as the boys spent happy time together, playing soccer and video games, and even asked to sleep in their grandmother's bed, whom they hadn't seen in over 2 years. However, their happiness was short-lived. On November 24, 2018, Jose passed away after suffering another stroke. This was a devastating blow for the children. Aunt Monica reassured them with love and calmness, promising to support whatever decision they made. The boys decided to live with Aunt Monica. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Born on July 16, 1982, Katrina is the youngest of Vicky's 3 children. She has 2 siblings, an older brother named Chad and a younger sister named Miranda. Katrina's parents separated when she was young, and she lived with her mother in Mason, Illinois, a suburb outside the city. Katrina is a kind, cheerful person who brings joy to those around her. She especially loves the holiday season and enjoys giving humorous gifts to friends and family. Katrina is a devoted church member, always willing to help those in need. Katrina was content with her life, and in her 20s, she met Todd Smith at a bar. Todd was not only charming but also successful. As a financial planner, he was able to run his own business from home. They found that they had a lot in common and their relationship blossomed. One thing that helped their relationship grow was Todd's flexible work schedule, which allowed them to travel extensively together. After 3 years of dating, Todd proposed to Katrina, and she happily accepted. The couple began planning their wedding, deciding to have an intimate ceremony at a local park. Katrina was thrilled at the prospect of their future together, especially since she had fallen in love with Todd's 3 daughters and was excited to be a part of their lives. Katrina's family, including her mother Vicky and siblings Chad and Miranda, found him to be trustworthy and personable. They believed that he would take good care of Katrina. After their marriage, Katrina and Todd began living together in Masny. On October 20, 2012, Katrina called her mother to say that she was house-sitting for a friend. During the conversation, Katrina mentioned that she would be coming to dinner on October 24 and that she had something to share with Vicky, leaving her mother wondering what it could be. Before the conversation ended, Vicky promised to make Katrina's favorite meal: chicken and dumplings, a promise she never kept. On October 23rd, Todd Smith called 911, reporting that his wife Katrina had disappeared. He had been trying to reach her for hours without success. He told police that she was house-sitting for a friend and that the house was empty when he arrived. When Katrina's sister and brother, Miranda and Chad, learned of her disappearance, they were worried. Chad, who was training with the U.S. Army in Oklahoma, immediately flew to Illinois to help find his sister. That night, a resident called police about an abandoned car near Rock River. After investigating, the police determined that the car belonged to Katrina. They could not find any signs of a fight or anything else that would indicate that she was missing. Vicky's worst fears were confirmed when she learned that Katrina's daughter's car had been found abandoned in a ditch on the side of the road in an unfamiliar area. The situation seemed ominous, and Vicky could not shake the feeling that something terrible had happened to Katrina. If Katrina's car was in that area, then someone must have taken her and left the car there. After the discovery of the car, Katrina's case was officially declared a missing persons case and search efforts were intensified. At 11 p.m. on October 12th, Todd was taken to the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department for questioning. During the interview, Todd told police that he last saw his wife, Katrina, on October 22nd. According to Todd, Katrina had come to their home for a short time to do laundry in preparation for a job interview the following day. While doing laundry, she went to the mall to buy groceries and returned home at 8:30 p.m. After returning home, she left again, as she was house-sitting for a friend, as she told Todd. After Katrina was reported missing, her husband Todd made a heartfelt public appeal, pleading for her safe return. Todd broke down in tears, begging anyone with information about Katrina's disappearance to come forward. Speaking to the media, he urged the public to share any information they had about her whereabouts. As the search for Katrina continued, police and volunteers formed search teams to comb the area. They focused their efforts near the park where Katrina's abandoned car was found, hoping to uncover evidence or clues. Upon arriving in Illinois after military training in Oklahoma, Katrina's brother Chad met a group of people at the park who were eager to help find Katrina. To facilitate the search effort, Chad used his military training to lead the volunteers. He carefully mapped the area, divided the volunteers into teams, and coordinated a thorough investigation. As part of this effort, police used trained dogs to join the search. Katrina's mother, Vicky, created missing person flyers and distributed them throughout town, placing them at gas stations, convenience stores, and lamp posts to notify as many people as possible of her daughter's disappearance. Despite her efforts, Vicky's emotional state due to grief and fear made it difficult for her to participate in the search. Chad, who had supported Todd throughout this time, encouraged him to focus on finding Katrina, reminding him that they needed to stay strong. Later, a police officer discovered several items near Katrina's abandoned car. These items included a wallet, a cell phone, and a towel that appeared to have been used to wipe up blood. It was clear that someone had thrown these items away when they left the car. At that point, the police suspected that something terrible had happened. The items discovered have been sent to the crime lab for further analysis, and police are anxiously awaiting the test results to shed further light on the investigation. During the investigation into Katrina's disappearance, police investigated her personal life for clues. They wanted to understand every aspect of her life by looking into her relationships, daily routine, and any potential involvement in activities such as gambling or drug use. To gather information, police interviewed Katrina's friends and family members. They all described Katrina as a kind and responsible person. Katrina's family and friends described her as a dedicated and hardworking person. They claimed that she never showed any signs of addiction or irresponsible behavior. Instead, they described her as a devoted wife and a woman of integrity. During the investigation into Katrina's disappearance, a local woman came forward with a useful piece of information. She claimed to have seen a blue car matching Katrina's parked on a bridge over the Rock River on the night she disappeared. The trunk was open, and someone was kneeling behind it, but the woman could not tell the person's gender or race, preventing her from providing further details. Police had to investigate possible motives and consider whether anyone, including those close to Katrina, wanted to harm her. Despite claims of a happy marriage, Todd became a target of interest, as police know that even seemingly happy relationships can harbor hidden conflicts or secrets. 3 days after searching for Katrina, police examined her cell phone at the crime lab and found vital information. The phone provided a wealth of data, including text messages, incoming and outgoing calls, photos, videos, and her GPS location. This information allowed police to reconstruct a clear picture of Katrina's activities. Notably, they discovered that she was having an affair with a coworker named Guy Gabriel. The relationship began when they met after work one evening. Initially getting along well, it eventually developed into a romantic relationship. A police background check on Guy revealed a troubled past. It revealed a history of domestic violence, and the police suspected him of being involved in Katrina's disappearance. Furthermore, the police discovered text messages sent by Guy to Katrina, pressuring her to leave her husband Todd for him. Guy then became the prime suspect in the case. The police suspected that Guy may have reacted violently after Katrina refused to leave her husband for him. The revelation of Katrina's affair shocked her family and friends, as they believed her marriage to Todd was perfect and happy. No one suspected that Katrina had been having an affair behind Todd's back. When Todd discovered the affair through the police investigation, he was devastated. The news of his wife's affair hit him hard, taking him completely by surprise. Guy was interviewed by police about Katrina's disappearance. During the interview, Guy appeared nervous and admitted to his affair with Katrina, but denied any involvement in her disappearance. He claimed to have been at work the night Katrina went missing. Further investigation uncovered a previous incident that occurred 2 weeks before Katrina went missing. It was reported that during lunchtime at the auto shop where Katrina and Guy worked, a black Volkswagen Jetta drove through the parking lot with the sunroof open. The driver, who was wearing a mask, handed out flyers through the sunroof. When employees read the flyers, they found a derogatory statement about Katrina and Guy's relationship. The car quickly sped away, leaving people wondering who the mysterious driver was. Police interviewed Katrina's hairdresser, who shared that Katrina felt threatened and wanted to buy a gun for self-defense. Katrina told her hairdresser that she suspected someone was following her. Police searched Katrina's car at the police garage for evidence. Using a chemical called luminol, which glows when it comes into contact with blood, they found a significant amount of blood in the trunk. On November 9th, 17 days after a firefighter in Rock River discovered a body, and the fire department was called to assist in recovering the body and pulling it from the water. After it was pulled from the water, it was determined that the body was that of a woman. However, because the body was so badly decomposed, identification was difficult. It was unclear whether the body was Katrina's. The body was then taken to the medical examiner's office, where an autopsy was performed to determine the cause of death. To confirm the identity, dental records were sent to a county specialist for analysis. The expert then compared the dental features of the body with those in Katrina's records, confirming that the body was Katrina. Katrina's autopsy revealed that her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. When her family learned that her body had been discovered, they were devastated. The heartbreaking news left them reeling, and it was difficult to accept the full extent of what had happened. Katrina's mother, Vicky, found the news difficult to accept, and the thought of her daughter suffering such a violent end was almost unbearable. Although Guy Gabriel is no longer a suspect, police have sought his perspective on who may have harmed Katrina. Guy reveals that Katrina had mentioned divorce. He believes that Todd's controlling nature may have escalated and led to the tragedy. As police dig deeper into Katrina and Todd's marriage, some disturbing facts come to light. Katrina had told several people that she wanted a divorce from Todd. In addition, police discovered that Katrina had met with a divorce attorney just one day before her disappearance. Contrary to what Katrina claimed, she was not house-sitting at a friend's apartment, but had actually moved out after her split from Todd. Based on the information gathered and interviews conducted, police began to suspect that Todd was behind the mysterious incident at Katrina's workplace. Suspicions were heightened when police discovered that Todd had recently driven a car matching the make and color of the one involved in Katrina's murder, a black VW Jetta. Todd was believed to have been test driving the car at the time of the murder. When police told Katrina's family that Todd was the prime suspect in her case and that he had been arrested, they were shocked and in disbelief. The family had loved and respected Todd as a member of the family, and the news was devastating. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was devastated by the news. The thought that her son-in-law could commit such a heinous crime made her sick. She had always trusted Todd and could not imagine that he would commit such a terrible act. The possibility that Todd was responsible for her daughter's murder never crossed her mind. The police discovered that Todd's investment company was in legal trouble and he was no longer working. As a result, Katrina was the family's sole source of income. Based on this information, the police suspected that if Katrina left Todd, she would take the money with her. This possibility may have motivated Todd to consider killing his wife as a way to gain control of the family's finances. Police obtained a search warrant for Todd and Katrina's home to collect evidence. During the search, they found a baseball bat in the garage that had blood on it, leading police to suspect that it could be the murder weapon. The injuries on Katrina's body supported this theory, as they were consistent with blunt force trauma. To confirm their suspicions, a DNA test was conducted on the bat. The results showed that the blood on the bat belonged to Katrina. Furthermore, police discovered a large, unusually clean area under the car. Upon examination, they discovered that the blood left under the car matched Katrina's DNA profile. 30 days after Katrina's murder, her husband Todd was arrested and charged in connection with her death. Todd's trial began on January 11, 2017. During the trial, the prosecution presented its case against Todd, replaying the events of the night Katrina died. Key evidence included a recent meeting between Katrina and a divorce attorney to discuss her marital problems. The prosecution argued that Katrina's decision to divorce indicated that their relationship was in trouble. According to the prosecution, Katrina had visited Todd's home that day to do laundry in preparation for a job interview the next morning. During the visit, the prosecution claimed that Katrina had made it clear to Todd that she wanted to end their marriage. They argued that this caused Todd to become aggressive and attack Katrina. The prosecution alleged that while Katrina was in the garage, Todd became angry and picked up a baseball bat, beating her to death. After Katrina died, Todd allegedly moved her body into the trunk of her car. Todd then drove Katrina's body to a remote area called Rock River, where he disposed of the body by throwing it off a nearby bridge. After dumping her body, Todd parked his car on the side of the road and walked home. Once home, he cleaned up any evidence of his crime by disposing of Katrina's cell phone and the bloody towels he used to mop the garage floor. Todd Smith was found guilty by a jury and sentenced to 55 years in prison. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Alicia Ross. Alicia Ross was born on February 8, 1980, in the Canadian city of Markham, in the province of Ontario. There's no information about her biological parents. All that's known is that they gave up their rights over the girl, and she was adopted a few months later by a couple named Marvin and Sharon Ross. Her adoptive parents surrounded her with love and care, doing everything they could to ensure their daughter lacked for nothing and could fully develop her talents. When Alicia started going to school, her adoptive parents decided to get divorced, but they maintained a friendly relationship and continued to support together in their daughter's life. Shortly after, Sharon remarried, and her new husband, named Julius Forrest, treated her as if she were his own daughter. Alicia did well in school, excelled at drawing, and also had a passion for photography, enjoying discovering new cities and countries. After finishing school, she spent a year in Australia, where she traveled and enjoyed life before returning home and enrolling in university. In the summer of 2005, Alicia went on a hiking trip in the mountains with her friends. She enjoyed spending time in nature, away from the busy city life. During the trip, she met a 29-year-old man named Sean, and they started a romantic relationship. The age difference of 4 years did not bother the couple. At the time, Alicia still lived in her adoptive parents' home, occupying the basement with a separate entrance, which allowed her to live independently from her parents. On August 16th, Alicia took a walk in the park with her adoptive mother and their dogs. Alicia seemed happy and shared that she was about to be promoted to the position of senior sales manager at work. She was very proud as she had been working hard for a long time, and her efforts were finally paying off. Additionally, Alicia talked to her mother about her boyfriend, Sean, whom she had been dating for just over a month but she seemed deeply in love with. Alicia hoped that this romance could develop into something more significant in the future and expressed a desire to introduce Sean to her adoptive parents by arranging a family dinner. After a stroll through the park, Sharon headed home, and Alicia went out on a date with her sweetheart, promising not to stay out too late because she had to get up early for work the next day. They said their goodbyes and went their separate ways. After meeting with Sean, Alicia invited him to her house. They had a good time together, and around midnight, he went home. Alicia accompanied him to the door, which served as a second exit from the backyard. They said goodbye with a kiss, and then he left, promising to call her as soon as he got home. Around midnight, as promised, Sean called his girlfriend, but she didn't answer the phone. He wasn't too worried, thinking that Alicia had simply fallen asleep since she had to get up early for work. However, the next morning, when he tried to call her again and she still didn't answer, he genuinely became concerned and contacted a mutual acquaintance who worked in the same office as Alicia. From her, he learned that Alicia had not gone to work, and he immediately rushed to her house. On the morning of August 17th, Sharon and Julius left their home around 10 a.m. to play golf with friends. They noticed their daughter's car in the driveway but assumed a colleague had picked her up, so they didn't think much of it and continued with their plans. About half an hour later, Sean arrived at the Ross residence and, finding no sign of Alicia there, he called the police to report her as a missing person. Sean also immediately contacted Sharon to inform her of the situation. Sharon and Julius rushed home immediately after hearing the news. By the time they arrived, the police were already present at the scene. Sean was the first person to notice the girl's disappearance and inform the authorities. Sean was also the last person to see Alicia alive and well the evening before she vanished. According to Sean, they had said goodbye at the gate where his car was parked around midnight, and she had not been in touch since then. When Sharon and Julius reached the house, law enforcement was already there, investigating the area and speaking with Sean, who had called them. Sean appeared visibly nervous and distraught. When the mother checked Alicia's room, she noticed that all of her daughter's personal belongings were still in their place. Her purse, passport, driver's license, keys, cell phone, bank cards, and cash were all left behind. The gate was open but not forced, suggesting that she either let her abductor in or willingly left the yard with someone. In the backyard, the police found some signs of disturbance. The lawn and flowers in one spot were trampled, as if someone had fallen there. Additionally, a pair of cigarettes and Alicia's right sandal, which she had been wearing the evening before, were found on the ground in a straight line. Neither Alicia nor her parents smoked, and Sean claimed he never smoked that particular brand. Sean was considered the prime suspect almost immediately. At first, he was clearly very nervous and his narration seemed a bit confusing and disjointed. Second, he was the first to report his girlfriend's disappearance to the police, even before speaking with her parents and confirming that they hadn't seen her either. Therefore, he definitely knew she was missing. Moreover, the authorities found biological traces of Sean and her on her bed. Based on this, the investigation speculated that Alicia may have rejected Sean's advances, and he decided to force himself on her, then trying to cover his tracks, and staging her disappearance, which likely resulted in her losing her life. Sean was brought to the police station and questioned. The investigator presented their theory to him, which left the young man stunned. He was dismayed to be the prime suspect and swore he would never harm his girlfriend, as he loved her. Sean admitted they had intimate moments that evening, but insisted it was consensual. Her parents had nothing bad to say about Sean. He hadn't argued with their daughter, hadn't mistreated her, and she spoke only well of him. Their relationship was progressing rapidly and quite happily, and Alicia even hoped to have a future with him. It's understandable that the parents are deeply concerned about their daughter's disappearance. The facts known so far suggest that she had no plans or reasons to leave her apartment. She was looking forward to a promotion at her workplace, and as a responsible person, it's unlikely she would have just abandoned everything. Even if there had been unforeseen circumstances, she would have surely informed her parents and taken her documents, money, and phone with her. The police couldn't find sufficient evidence to arrest Sean, so he was released after questioning. However, the investigators haven't completely ruled out Sean as a suspect and are continuing to monitor him. Sean himself seemed depressed and very disturbed. An intensive search for Alicia began the day after she went missing. Initially, a thorough inspection of the house and yard was conducted. Investigators examined the surrounding area in detail and interviewed neighbors. However, no one reported having heard or seen anything suspicious that night. The authorities theorized that the woman disappeared sometime between midnight, when she said goodbye to Sean, and dawn, a time when the streets are usually quiet and deserted, making it difficult to find witnesses. Flyers with Alicia's photos were distributed throughout the city, listing the phone numbers where people could provide any information about her whereabouts. The search for Alicia became one of the most extensive operations in the history of Ontario. Every rugged terrain, ravine, and swampy area were examined, but no clues, leads, or even suggestions about the whereabouts of the missing woman were found. Her parents also appealed to the public through the media, expressing their belief that their daughter was still alive but was being held against her will somewhere. They implored whoever had their daughter to let her return home unharmed and not to do her any harm. The police leaned towards the theory that someone Alicia knew personally had kidnapped her and possibly ended her life. This hypothesis was supported by the lack of signs of struggle, the absence of evidence of entry, and the fact that the door had been left open, but no concrete clues were found. The cigarette found on the floor had only a very smudged fingerprint that could not be identified. Investigators thoroughly reviewed Alicia's contacts and analyzed all calls and messages from her phone and email, but nothing suspicious was uncovered. On the sixth day of the search, the case was officially classified as a criminal offense, even though there was a lack of evidence, and Sean remained the main suspect. Sean lived alone in his own house about 10 miles from Alicia's house. After realizing that public suspicion had increased following his media appearance, he no longer participated in the search and refused to speak to the press. The investigators questioned Sean 3 more times, but his story remained consistent. He was then offered a lie detector test, which he refused, further convincing the police that he was involved in the crime. 2 weeks after the disappearance, Sean was arrested on an unrelated charge. He was pulled over late at night for driving under the influence and resisting arrest. Speculation arose that he was drowning his guilt in alcohol. After Sean's arrest, Alicia's parents gave another interview, sharing that they had not met him personally and only knew of him through their daughter's stories. They believed she was happy, but now Sharon considered the possibility that she may have withheld certain details to avoid upsetting them, despite having planned to introduce her boyfriend to her family soon. The police interviewed Sean's neighbors to determine if they had noticed anything unusual recently, such as him disposing of large trash bags, behaving suspiciously, leaving unexpectedly, or washing his car. However, these investigations did not yield any significant information. The detectives were left hoping that Sean would eventually confess everything. About a month after Alicia's disappearance, there was an unexpected development in the case. The initial media attention surrounding her case began to wane, and the search efforts continued but were no longer prominently featured in news reports. The investigation appeared to have reached a dead end. Then, on September 20th, 2005, more than a month after Alicia went missing, a completely unexpected twist occurred. A 31-year-old local resident named Daniel contacted the police and confessed to ending Alicia's life, providing the location where he had hidden her body. It's important to note that this man was never under suspicion, and the police had not considered him at all during their investigation. Initially, it seemed that the man simply craved fame and attention, and therefore decided to take responsibility for the most notorious case in recent years. However, all doubts were dispelled when the police found her body in the location he had indicated. Before delving into who this new person of interest was, let's examine why the police had not shown any interest in him previously. Daniel was an unemployed inmate who lived in his mother's house, which was adjacent to the Alicia family's home. Their house were separated by unkempt shrubs, forming an almost impenetrable barrier. Although the criminal and the victim had lived practically their entire lives right next to each other, they had never interacted before. Alicia had observed Daniel behaving in an unusual manner on his house, leading her to believe he might be mentally unwell. Daniel had experienced significant socialization issues from a young age. He lacked friends, was mocked at school, and all his attempts to form relationships were unsuccessful, causing him to develop a deep resentment towards women. As a child, girls had rejected him, calling him a loser and refusing to associate with him. At the age of 8, Daniel was diagnosed with a socializing behavioral disorder and had been receiving ongoing psychological treatment. Although therapy did not significantly improve his condition, during his teenage years, he confessed to having fantasies of suddenly attacking and overpowering a girl, which excited him. However, specialists remained confident that these fantasies would remain within his imagination. After finishing school, Daniel stopped attending therapy sessions and decided not to continue his education. He became a recluse, living in his mother's house and isolating himself from the outside world. Daniel spent most of his days in his room, often visiting adult websites. Occasionally, he would venture out in the evenings to secretly observe his neighbors, peeping into their windows. He seemed particularly interested in watching when someone was engaged in intimate activities, which excited him. Daniel initially claimed that Alicia's death was accidental and he hid the body to avoid punishment. He said that when he realized she showed no signs of life, he placed her body in the trunk of his mother's car and drove about 50 miles out of town, hiding it in a bushy ravine by the side of a country road. 3 weeks later, fearing the body would be discovered, he moved it in the middle of the night to a deserted area. The body was found in the place Daniel indicated, confirming Daniel's guilt. The condition of the remains suggested the girl had been treated with extreme cruelty. Alicia seemed to have been hit by a vehicle. The forensic examination revealed that she had almost all of her ribs broken, her neck and both arms fractured, and extensive closed head trauma with internal bleeding. The exact cause of death could not be determined. The forensic experts were surprised, as they had never seen anything like it before. It was necessary to clarify all the circumstances and the timeline of events that fateful night to precisely determine how Alicia suffered such injuries. Initially, the convicted man claimed he had had an argument with his neighbor on a path covered in bushes between their houses. At some point during the verbal altercation, she called him a loser, which angered him, and he struck her in the head. When she fell, he kicked her several times in the chest. When he realized she wasn't breathing, he decided to hide the body and then moved it again when the search area expanded. However, there was something in his story that didn't add up. There were missing details and specifics. For example, it wasn't clear what Daniel was doing at his neighbor's house at night, why they started arguing, what caused such a brutal beating, and why the evidence found at the scene was arranged in a straight line. Restoring the full picture of events was challenging, but law enforcement managed to do so. That evening, Daniel went to spy on his neighbors. He noticed that Alicia's boyfriend had come over, so he approached their house closely. As the couple was being intimate, he watched them from a window. Then he moved back to the bushes but did not leave. Closer to midnight, the lovers went outside and kissed by the gate, just a couple of feet away from the lurking neighbor. When Sean left, the girl returned to the yard and noticed Daniel. She became very angry, realizing that he had been spying on her and her boyfriend all this time. She started yelling at him, calling him a pervert, and demanded that he leave immediately. Finally, Alicia called him a loser, after which she turned around and was about to go back into the house. This is a very disturbing and violent incident. The victim was subjected to a brutal physical assault, with the perpetrator striking her numerous times in the head, neck, chest, and back, causing extensive injuries and internal bleeding. After realizing the victim had died, the perpetrator moved the body to his garage, stripped her naked, and masturbated. He then placed the corpse in the trunk of his mother's car and transported it to a remote location outside the city. This sequence of events indicates a severe lack of empathy and disregard for human life. The language used is graphic and unsettling, but necessary to convey the gravity of the situation. Upon returning to his home, the criminal took a shower, changed his clothes, and behaved as if nothing had happened. His clothes, as well as the personal belongings of the victim and the towels he used to clean the crime scene, were bagged and disposed of. The trial and sentencing only began in April 2007, when new details were made public. The accused confessed to having taken the life of his neighbor, but he and his lawyer insisted that it was an involuntary act. Additionally, the defense requested a psychiatric evaluation, indicating that Daniel was ill and should not be considered responsible for his actions, suggesting that he should be treated in a clinic rather than incarcerated. However, the prosecution argued that, despite his mental illness and issues with anger management, Daniel acted with full awareness of the consequences of his actions. He ruthlessly kicked Alicia with all his might, knowing that this would likely result in her death. Nevertheless, the court-ordered psychiatric evaluation confirmed that the accused could be fully responsible for his actions. Regarding the items found in the backyard, Daniel never admitted to having placed them in a straight line. On May 7, 2007, Daniel Sylvester was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 16 years. A year later, Canadian singer-songwriter Kathleen Edwards wrote a song titled Alicia Ross, which portrayed the events from the perspective of Alicia during the final moments of her life. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lynn Keel. Rexford Lynn Keel, commonly known as Lynn Keel, was married to Elizabeth Bess Edwards Keel for more than 20 years. In 2005, Lynn was a truck driver, while Elizabeth worked at Microbac Laboratories. Lynn and Elizabeth lived in a remote house in Nash County, North Carolina. As 2005 ended, they, like many others, were preparing for the new year. However, on January 1, 2006, an unfortunate event occurred. It was a cold day, and the steps outside their house were icy. When Elizabeth stepped outside, she slipped and fell, striking her head on the concrete steps. The injury was severe and ultimately fatal. The medical examiner determined that Elizabeth died from blunt force trauma to the head, and her death was classified as an accident. Elizabeth's sudden death at the age of 42 shocked her husband, relatives, colleagues, and friends. A year later, Lynn Keel decided to move forward with his life. He transitioned from being a truck driver to working in real estate. In 2007, during a work trip to Latin America, Lynn, who was 45 at the time, met Diana, who was 19 years younger than him. Diana, a single mother from Bogota, Colombia, was not only beautiful but also kind. Their relationship blossomed quickly, and inspired by the idea of the American dream, Diana moved to the United States. Diana and Lynn moved into his home in Nash County, where his wife, Elizabeth Keel, had tragically passed away in an accident about a year earlier. Soon after, Diana and Lynn got married, and shortly afterward, they welcomed a son named Max. In 2017, Diana graduated from Nash Community College and started working as an emergency room nurse at Wilson Medical Center. The initial years of their marriage were unremarkable, but over time, their relationship began to decline. Diana confided in her close friend that Lynn was a controlling man who often spoke to her harshly and verbally abused her. The atmosphere in their home was consistently tense. Lynn wouldn't allow Diana to spend extended time alone with anyone. Although she started considering divorce, she felt scared of her husband due to his threats. He used their baby as a means of manipulation, warning her that if she left, he would deport her and she would never see her son again. Diana endured this situation for the sake of her children, but she knew that she also has the limits. In 2019, Diana's daughter from her previous marriage, Laura, was 18 years old. She had graduated from Southern Nash High School and was starting her freshman year at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. Meanwhile, 10-year-old Max was living with his parents. Diana worked as a nurse at Wilson Medical Center, where she was well-loved and respected by both her patients and colleagues. On March 7, 2019, Diana's mother, Esperanza Prada, who lived in Colombia, received an unexpected message from Diana that said, "Mom, I love you very much." Esperanza was aware that Diana was unhappy in her marriage and wanted to get a divorce, but she also knew that Diana was afraid of her husband. 3 days later, Laura, Diana's daughter, raised the alarm. On March 10th, she sent out a tweet asking for help to locate her mother. The tweet read, "This is unbelievable. You always see this happen to others and never think it could happen to you. My mom is missing. If you have any information, please let me know and retweet this to help spread the word. Thank you." On the same day, Laura contacted the medical center where her mother worked, but none of Diana's colleagues had seen or heard from her in the last 2 days. An employee at the medical center requested a welfare check on Diana after not hearing from her for days. She told that Diana was supposed to work that night and usually arrived 30 minutes early. She normally responded quickly to texts, but this time she hadn't replied. The nurse noted that this was unusual behavior for Diana, which led her to contact the sheriff's office for a welfare check. Diana was a devoted mother who communicated with her family every day, actively engaged on social media, but now her messages were unread and her FaceTime calls went unanswered. When a police officer arrived at the Keel family's home, Lynn was there. It was surprising that his wife's disappearance was reported to the police by her co-workers instead of by him. Lynn told the officer that he last saw Diana 2 days earlier, on March 8, when she left the house. Since her car was still parked outside, this raised more suspicion, prompting the police to bring Lynn in for questioning. When asked where his wife was, 57-year-old Keel said she had gone out to run errands and hadn't returned yet. He noted that she sometimes left for a few days. However, his explanation raised suspicions. The man was released without facing any charges. The police to start a search for Diana. Investigators learned she hadn't used her cell phone or bank cards for several days, raising concern for her safety. Her house is in a secluded area with no neighbors who could assist the police. However, detectives found out that on the morning of March 8, Diana and her partner had a heated argument on their front porch. A courier, who delivered a package to Diana that day, was the last person to see her, apart from Lynn Keel. After interviewing Diana's co-workers, the police learned that she was experiencing problems with her husband. They believed she would never abandon her son or run away. Her main concern about getting a divorce was the fear of losing custody of her 10-year-old son. Every person the detective spoke to pointed to one potential suspect in Diana's disappearance: her husband, Lynn Keel. Early in the investigation, a troubling detail came to light. 2 years before Diana vanished, Lynn had taken out a life insurance policy on her for over $1 million, naming himself as the sole beneficiary. Furthermore, in 2008, sheriff's deputies were called to their home due to a domestic disturbance, but no further action was taken at that time. Just 2 days after the investigation began, the police received a disturbing call. An employee from the North Carolina Department of Transportation reported finding something on Pokes Hole Road. Sadly, the man had discovered Diana's body, which seemed to have been there since the day she went missing. He found it while checking an illegal dumping site. Pokes Hole Road is a dead-end street that leads to farmland. While it was a relief that the body was found, the word relief feels inadequate given the tragic circumstances. It's unclear how long it might have taken for the police to locate Diana's body, which was 30 miles away from her home. Nash County Sheriff Keith Stone shared his sadness about the situation, stating, "Everyone who knew her spoke very well of her. This is a tragic event. What makes it even more heartbreaking is that we now have a 10-year-old child who has lost her mother." He added, "This situation is very difficult. Life is delicate, and seeing a child left without her mother is extremely hard. We have many questions that still need answers, which is why the Nash County Sheriff's Office is approaching this case with compassion, integrity, and commitment." The circumstances surrounding her death are still unclear, but it was evident that foul play was involved. The police identified one primary suspect, Lynn Keel. Upon learning that his wife had been found dead, he expressed surprise. He was taken to the police station for questioning, where he spoke to investigators. Lynn maintained that Diana frequently left for several days but always came back. However, this contradicted statements from Diana's colleagues, family, and friends, who revealed that Lynn tightly controlled her life and even prevented her from seeing her friends. After the interrogation, Lynn was released because the autopsy results were not yet available. Diana's cousin, who lives in Colombia, shared with reporters that Diana moved to North Carolina to pursue the American dream, but instead, it turned into a nightmare. After the medical examiner's report was released, disturbing details about Diana's death emerged. She suffered severe skull fractures and had multiple sharp injuries on the left side of her face and neck. Some of these injuries occurred after her death, suggesting that the attacker may have had a personal vendetta against her. When the police arrived to arrest Lynn and search his home, he had already fled. He was placed on a nationwide wanted list, with reports indicating he might be driving a gold pickup truck and could be dangerous. After being questioned at the police station, Lin drove his 10-year-old son to his parents' house, took his father's car, and escaped. During a search warrant executed at the home he shared with Diana, authorities confiscated various firearms, including rifles, pistols, and revolvers, as well as swords, a machete, and several knives. Authorities discovered 2 pages from the diary of Diana's 18-year-old daughter in a Dodge Ram owned by Lin. When the sheriff was asked about the contents of those pages, he said he was not comfortable sharing that information. The search for Lin was ongoing, and it was revealed that he had left the state, but his exact location was still unknown. Sheriff Stone mentioned that they had received tips regarding Lin's truck from people in Texas and Florida, but no new information about his capture was confirmed. He urged the public to check local motels and hotels for a pickup truck matching the license plate number provided in a public notice. On March 17, 2019, just 5 days after Diana's body was found, Arizona State Police arrested Lin, 34 miles from the U.S.-Mexico border. He had a large amount of cash and many canned goods, suggesting he intended to cross into Mexico. Following his arrest, he was airlifted to Nash County and faced charges related to his wife Diana's death. Forensic investigators discovered significant evidence that Diana's attack occurred in the bedroom. The prosecutor stated that after taking Diana to a secluded spot, Lin went to a nearby Walmart and purchased cleaning supplies in an attempt to erase any traces of the crime. In October 2021, Rexford Lin Keel, 59, pleaded no contest to charges against him in order to avoid a lengthy trial. A no contest plea is similar to a guilty plea, meaning that the defendant accepts responsibility for the charges. Lin admitted to second-degree murder and first-degree kidnapping. His defense attorneys requested the judge to consider his kidney failure as mitigating factors during sentencing. Diana's mother addressed the court, emphasizing the loss of her daughter and urging women in abusive relationships to seek safety. She appealed to the judge for a strict sentence. Diana's cousin issued a statement from the family expressing gratitude to law enforcement for capturing Lin, the suspect in Diana's murder. They conveyed their appreciation for the compassion shown by the Nash County Sheriff's Office and the support they had received. The cousin described Diana as an amazing mother, daughter, sister, and friend, noting that her love for her children was boundless and that she brought joy to everyone with her laughter and kindness. They asked everyone to remember Diana and her children with positive thoughts and thanked everyone for their support. Lin did not share his reasons for committing the crime. It's possible he discovered that Diana was meeting with a lawyer to start divorce proceedings. Additionally, there is the matter of the insurance policy worth over $1 million. Under a plea agreement, Lin was sentenced to 32 to 41 years in prison. Moreover, police are investigating the death of Lin's first wife, Elizabeth. There are lingering questions about whether her death was truly an accident. Her family has expressed ongoing concerns and sadness regarding her death. In their statement, they noted their sorrow that another life has been lost and that they have always questioned the circumstances surrounding Elizabeth's passing. Stone, a law enforcement official, stated, "We are going to pursue all leads concerning this matter, and we will review the initial incident reports." He added that discussions with the district attorney's office are necessary. Elizabeth is buried in a family plot in Spring Hope. Stone is collaborating with a pathologist and reviewing the evidence, indicating that exhuming Elizabeth's body is a strong possibility. Dr. John Butts, who served as North Carolina's chief medical examiner for 24 years, explained that exhuming a body is typically done when there are unresolved questions that could be clarified by re-examining the remains. He shared that there have been instances where deaths initially ruled as accidents turned out to be homicides. For example, someone who falls to their death may later be found to have been pushed. The examination results would remain the same, but the context surrounding the incident would shift significantly. Despite this, Dr. Butts noted that there has been no new information regarding Elizabeth's death in the past 2 years. This suggests that authorities may not have found grounds to reopen the investigation or exhume the body at this time, but there could be further developments in the case in the future. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Laura Day. Laura Day was born in 1965 and lived in Orange, California at the age of 17. At the time, she was dating a 21-year-old college student named James Kendall. Although their relationship seemed to be going well, there was a problem. James was seeing other girls. Laura found out about this, and instead of ending the relationship, she decided to take revenge while hiding her true feelings. On May 11, 1982, James drove Laura home to Laguna Beach. After getting out of the pickup, she took a pistol from her car and shot James in the chest before shooting herself. James died at the scene, while Laura was shot in the shoulder and survived. Neighbors who heard the gunshots called 911, and emergency services arrived quickly. James died and Laura was taken to the hospital for treatment of her injuries. Initially, the police thought that a robbery might have taken place, based on Laura's story. However, they quickly doubted this idea when they found no signs of theft at the crime scene. The police discovered a note left by Laura on a jeweler's business card, stating that she had intended to kill her boyfriend and then end her life, to escape responsibility for her actions. In reality, she was unable to carry out her plan to end her life. Instead, she shot herself in the shoulder to make it look like an attack on the couple. This is why she changed her story after she recovered. Laura was brought in for questioning by police. During the interview, her story changed several times. She tried to convince them that she was the victim of a robbery, but her testimony was confusing. She struggled to explain why she wrote a particular note or why James was shot with her gun. Eventually, under pressure, Laura confessed that she had committed the crime out of desperation, claiming that she had been a victim of violence and feared for her life. She described James as a cruel man who had abused her on a regular basis and had been having affairs with other girls, which had left her suffering. As the investigation continued, more details emerged. James had not only dated other girls, but had also intended to end their relationship. On the day of the murder, he had informed Laura of this. It seemed that she had anticipated this outcome. She had brought a gun, written a note, and shot him as part of her revenge plan. Laura was possessive and did not want to share him with anyone. After Laura was convicted of second-degree murder, she was sentenced to the California Department of Juvenile Welfare. While this option may seem milder than a typical adult prison sentence, being surrounded by other teenagers posed significant risks for her. Despite experiencing a few assaults, her time there was generally uneventful. Fortunately, Laura was released in 1987 after serving 5 years. While incarcerated, she pursued her education and earned a degree in psychology. After her release, it seemed that Laura had learned valuable lessons about discipline and reintegration into society. At first, this was true. In the early 1990s, she moved to Baltimore and worked as a nurse at a hospital. During this time, she also got married. However, she found the job too difficult and stressful, and the salary did not meet her expectations, leading her to quit and get a divorce. Club dancer, a job that suited her well. She earned good money with minimal effort and attracted a lot of attention due to her beauty. With many fans showering her with gifts, she became quite popular. However, her personal life was tumultuous. She got married twice more, but she did not get divorced after the first marriage and immediately entered into the second one. The competent authorities found out about this, and a case was opened against her. This led to a new trial in 1993. She faced charges, and the police suspected she was married to a third man as well. Ultimately, she received a 6-month suspended sentence. Unfortunately, this punishment did not deter her. Her reckless lifestyle continued to lead her into trouble. Just 2 years later, Laura was arrested again, this time for using a firearm. She shot up her own car and attempted to stage it as an accident. In an attempt to obtain insurance fraudulently, the scheme was uncovered. Additionally, the girl had stolen various items, including a ring valued at about $3,000. During the investigation, it was found that she had stolen everything from her neighbors. For her crimes of fraud and theft, she was sentenced to 7 years in prison. However, she only served 6 months before her sentence was overturned, and she was released. In 1997, Laura relocated to Corpus Christi, Texas, a city located on the Gulf Coast in the southern part of the state. During this time, she resumed her previous work as a dancer and became a well-known bikini model. She also expanded her activities by selling explicit images and adult content, which proved to be quite profitable. With her earnings, Laura was able to purchase a mansion by the ocean, fulfilling a lifelong dream. The woman remained dedicated to her ambitions and continuously pursued her happiness. During this time, she met a British man named Fieldy, and their romance blossomed quickly, leading to marriage. They soon welcomed a son, Cameron. Friends observed that she was a devoted mother who took Cameron to football games. Other mothers were wary of her, fearing she might attract their husbands. This concern was not entirely baseless. Although Laura and Fieldy's married life appeared happy, it was not as it seemed. Their family happiness was short-lived, and the marriage ended in the summer of 2011. At that time, Laura was working as a sales representative when she unexpectedly met a truck driver named David, who was 12 years younger than her. Laura's striking beauty caught the attention of all the men at her workplace. When Laura meets David, they begin talking and discover that both are unhappy in their marriages. David is married to Kelly, while Laura is bored with her boring husband, Fieldy. They begin to communicate regularly. Later, David informs Kelly that he is in love with someone else, which shocks her. Kelly accepts the situation and agrees to a divorce without trying to stop David's new relationship. Both Laura and David filed for divorce and soon moved in together. The couple spent most of their time together, with David's son, Taylor Searing, sometimes staying with them. Kelly, the boy's mother, was very wary of Laura, the woman who had broken up her marriage, and did not trust her. In order to build a relationship with Taylor and Kelly, Laura planned fun weekend activities for David and Taylor, such as baking cookies, going to the movies, and shopping. Through these efforts, Laura was able to bond with Taylor and improve her relationship with Kelly, David's ex-wife. Laura was very happy in her new marriage with David. They got married in August 2012 in Las Vegas. After the wedding, they moved into Laura's luxurious mansion, which had a large swimming pool. David worked as a truck driver and was often away from home. While Laura, who was not working at the time, enjoyed her days at home, enjoying her comfortable life. A tragic event occurred unexpectedly. On Friday, October 5, 2012, Laura picked Taylor up from school so he could spend the week with his father David. Laura had arranged this with his biological mother Kelly, who agreed to let her son stay with his father and spend time with him. On the way home, Taylor asked Laura if they could have a picnic at the beach. Laura agreed but wanted to feed the boy first, so they stopped at McDonald's for a snack. After lunch, they went home to pick up their clothes and beach gear before heading to the beach. However, when they arrived at the nearest beach, they found it very crowded. The parking lot was full and there were many people on the beach, making it noisy. Laura was surprised by the crowd, as it was still a weekday and not many people usually went to the beach at that time. Laura decided to drive further until she found a quieter, more suitable place. After choosing a good spot, they stopped and Laura let the child swim in the water. Normally, the boy wore a special life jacket, but that day he could not use it because his neck was injured and his collar was irritated. To avoid causing discomfort to the tailor, Laura decided to let him swim without a life jacket, as she believed it was safe. She watched him for a few minutes and was pleased with how well Taylor swam. He always practiced in the pool at her house. Feeling reassured, she let him swim without a life jacket. At first, everything went smoothly as she watched him from the shore. However, after only a few minutes, something pulled the boy under the water and he disappeared from sight. Taylor sank and did not come up to the surface. Laura noticed the situation, felt scared and jumped into the water to look for the boy. She searched for the boy but couldn't find him. Just a few feet from where he had sunk, he floated to the surface and began to drift with the waves. Laura spotted Taylor, swam to him and yelled to try to wake him, but he was unresponsive. She pulled him to shore, but he wasn't breathing and showed no signs of life. She tried to remove the water from his lungs, but in her panic she couldn't perform CPR, even though she knew how. She called 911 for help, but the doctors told her it would take too long to get there because the resort was far from the city. Realizing this, Laura decided to take matters into her own hands. She put the boy in the car, got in the driver's seat, and drove herself to the hospital. Laura quickly delivered Taylor to the hospital after covering about 20 kilometers in just 30 minutes. She was screaming for help as she arrived. Despite efforts to resuscitate him, it was too late, and Taylor was pronounced dead. He had already turned blue, and medical staff confirmed his death. The doctors reported the incident to the police as part of standard procedure. The police contacted David at work to inform him of the tragic news. He immediately rushed to the hospital. Police also informed Kelly of the tragedy, and she hurried to the hospital to gather more information. Upon her arrival, Kelly learned only that her son had drowned. The doctors could not provide further details. Laura stood nearby and revealed that she had not told anyone about taking Taylor to the beach and had decided to go at his request. She described the situation as a tragic accident. Kelly begins screaming in the hospital, accusing Laura of causing her son's death. Laura appears emotionless, showing that she does not care. The child's father, David, blames Kelly for not taking care of their son. To everyone's surprise, it is revealed that the boy was with Laura at the beach at the time of the incident. Kelly was especially upset that Laura had allowed the boy to swim without a life jacket, despite the strong waves that could be dangerous even for adults. The waves were indeed powerful, and there was a dangerous undercurrent that could easily sweep away a child or even an adult. Every responsible adult understands the risks of allowing children to swim in such conditions, so Kelly was left wondering why Laura had acted so recklessly. This negligence ultimately led to the tragic death of the child. The police continued their investigation and began to notice inconsistencies in Laura's account. First, they discovered that the hospital she chose was not the closest to the beach. The child could have been taken to a nearer hospital or to a fire station, where help was readily available. Laura claimed she hadn't considered the fire station, suggesting that panic might have clouded her judgment. Second, the police found it hard to believe that Laura, who had taken a nursing course and worked in a hospital, couldn't administer first aid to the boy. The operator had provided her with phone instructions that even a beginner could follow, and she should have been able to manage the situation. Instead, she chose to drive to a hospital 30 minutes away, despite knowing that brain damage can occur within 5 minutes without oxygen. Her decision seemed illogical under the circumstances. This situation raised many questions about Laura. Laura, David, and the child's mother, Kelly, were taken to the police station for questioning. During the interrogation, Laura displayed no emotion, showing no signs of regret for what had happened. She kept her head down and avoided making eye contact with the police while answering their questions. Her statements were confusing and lacked detail, revealing that her entire account was fabricated. When asked how deep the boy had gone when he disappeared under the water, she simply said he was cute and claimed he had been swept away by a wave, insisting it all happened very quickly. Her behavior was highly suspicious. The Kelly was heartbroken over the loss of her son and blamed Laura for not watching him. David was also deeply affected by the tragedy, and the tension between the parents intensified the sorrow. The loss of her son was devastating for Kelly, as he meant everything to her. It was revealed that Taylor's father wanted full custody of him, wanting to ensure they would always be together. David was actively working with lawyers to achieve this. The police considered this a possible motive for the murder. Laura, who was possessive and had previously given her son to her ex-husband to focus on her personal life, likely did not support her David's desire for full custody. She may have felt that the boy was a threat to her relationship with David and decided to remove that threat. The police further explored David's relationship with Laura by asking him about it. He responded that they seemed to get along well, at least from his perspective. However, he soon began searching for information about his wife online and uncovered troubling details about her past. She had shot her boyfriend, faced accusations of bigamy, and was involved in fraud, theft, and adult content. This revelation shocked him, making it feel as if he was learning about a completely different person. Unable to cope with the information, he confronted Laura, who reassured him that her past was not dangerous or malicious. She explained that her boyfriend had abused her, and she had acted in self-defense. Trusting her words, David decided not to take any action, believing she posed no threat. Consequently, he continued to leave her alone with their son, a decision that ultimately led to the Taylors' tragic death. Police reviewed Laura's extensive criminal history and were shocked. A woman with a past of murder might be capable of repeating such an act. After considering all aspects of the case, police concluded that her actions indicated a willful disregard for the child's safety and criminal negligence. Initially, she failed to inform her parents about her plans, which she should have done to seek their permission. Instead of stopping at a busy public beach, she chose a deserted area. She allowed her son to swim without a life jacket and did not keep an eye on him. When she eventually retrieved him from the water, she was unable to perform basic first aid and instead went to the hospital, which severely compromised the child's chances of survival. Given her medical training, she was fully aware of this. Laura Day was arrested and charged with capital murder. The investigation was ongoing. Meanwhile, a large-scale experiment was conducted using a dummy that matched the deceased child's parameters. However, the experiment did not yield the expected results. The body did not surface as Laura had claimed. This raised doubts about her story. Less than 24 hours after her arrest, she posted $50,000 bail for her release. She was released with restrictions, including a prohibition on being in places where children gather, as she was deemed a potential threat to their safety. At that time, her husband still believed in Laura's innocence and stood by her side. He was deeply affected by the tragedy and was considering moving to Florida with her once the charges were dropped, viewing the situation as a misunderstanding. Despite being restricted from leaving, Laura, the main suspect, acted as if nothing had happened. Just a few days later, she went shopping at a mall, attempting to disguise herself with a wig, but a police officer recognized her, and she could no longer escape scrutiny. On December 4, 2012, she was arrested again for violating her bail conditions. Laura maintained her innocence regarding all charges. The police were conducting a thorough investigation, gathering evidence piece by piece. A witness emerged, stating that there was no panic or urgency to save the boy that day. According to him, Laura calmly took the boy and left the beach with a satisfied expression, even waving goodbye and smiling cheerfully. In January 2013, at the trial, the main piece of evidence against Laura in Taylor's murder was the testimony of a witness. The witness described seeing a woman, presumably Laura, leaving the scene looking content and happy, rather than panicked and anxious. The prosecution argued that Laura's unusual decision to deviate from her usual routine of picking up her son with her husband showed that she had planned ahead. Taking the boy away from his mother earlier under the pretext of spending more time with his father, despite the fact that his father was at work and not present. Laura did not inform anyone about going to the beach. Instead, she chose a secluded spot where there weren't any people around and sent Taylor into the water without a life jacket, seemingly waiting for him to drown in the strong waves. After he was in trouble, she slowly pulled him out, confirmed he wasn't breathing, and failed to attempt any life-saving measures. Instead of waiting for the ambulance, which may have arrived before her, she drove to a distant hospital, wasting the precious final minutes of the child's life. It was only due to a witness who accidentally arrived at the beach while she was leaving and testified against her that Laura was held accountable for her actions. During the trial, several witnesses pointed to inconsistencies in Laura's testimony. For example, she initially mentioned that she and Taylor had stopped by the house to pick up their swimsuits before heading to the beach. However, it was later revealed that she had brought all of her swimsuits, suggesting that she had prepared for the trip in advance. This raised doubts about how she could have anticipated that the boy would invite her to the beach. Additionally, her decision to remove the boy's life jacket was unusual, as he usually swam with it on. Her explanation for this decision seemed implausible, and there were no signs of irritation or injury to Taylor's skin. It became clear that the boy had swum far from the shore, creating a safety risk even though he had the necessary skills. Laura, despite having basic first aid knowledge from her hospital experience, was unable to help the boy. This inability raised doubts about her intentions and whether her actions contributed to the child's death. The mistrust of Laura stemmed from her past conviction for murder and her history of appearing in crime reports. The prosecution argued that she had not learned from her time in prison, suggesting that jealousy, which motivated her previous crime, may have influenced her actions toward the Taylor. The prosecutor suggested that jealousy over the boy was a motive for Laura's actions, arguing that she wanted her husband to focus all his attention on her rather than on his son. This was described as a cruel and selfish act driven by her possessiveness. In contrast, the defense pointed out that no one witnessed the boy's death, making it impossible to know exactly what happened and casting doubt on the prosecution's claims. A witness only saw Laura and the boy leaving the beach, and the autopsy revealed no signs of violent death on Taylor's body, suggesting that Laura did not drown him. Statistics indicate that approximately 800 children and teenagers in the United States die each year due to accidental drowning. The prosecution made a significant point about Laura's inability to perform first aid, which strengthened their case against her. Laura exhibited unusual behavior. She was anxious about being alone and often sought attention through her dramatic appearance. She was very impulsive and viewed other women as competition, which resulted in her having no female friends. Laura showed signs of extreme fear of being alone, both during and after the trial. At times, Laura perceived Kelly as a threat. Despite facing the possibility of life in prison, Laura did not appear overly concerned about her future. At one point, she asked her husband, David, if he loved her more than his ex-wife Kelly, which seemed inappropriate in such a situation. Laura seemed obsessed with being the central figure in David's life, viewing the child as a rival. While the child was alive, it would have been a link between Kelly and David, which may have hindered Laura's ambitions. This obsessive thinking may have led her to rationalize her choice to eliminate the child as a form of self-defense. In her mind, she was protecting her relationship with David. At first, David stood by his wife, Laura. However, as the investigation progressed and new evidence emerged, he came to believe that Laura intentionally killed their child. This realization prompted him to file for divorce, resulting in the end of their marriage. In June 2013, Laura Day was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole. Despite her conviction, Laura continues to assert her innocence. Although the prosecution presented strong arguments, the lack of direct evidence against her led some to question the court's decisions. Currently, even in prison, Laura remains hopeful. She has found a new partner during her incarceration and has begun a new relationship, despite knowing she will spend the rest of her life behind bars. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Kelly Lane. Kelly Lane was an Australian beauty and a champion water polo athlete. Despite her success, she faced a series of unfortunate events that led to tragedy, leaving many unanswered questions about her story. Born in 1975, Kelly grew up in a sports-oriented family. Her father, originally known as Bim, later became a police officer named Robert Lane. Her mother, Sandra, worked in a medical institution and coached water polo. Kelly had a brother named Morgan. The family was affluent and lived in a prestigious area of Sydney, Australia. Kelly was a golden child, attending Lee High School and later Mayclara. After graduating, she enrolled at the University of Newcastle to study art and then attended the Australian College of Physical Education. During this time, she started her sports career, working as a physical education teacher and coach at a girls' high school. Following in her mother's footsteps, Kelly became a highly skilled water polo player, which made her famous in her city. Her parents were proud of her accomplishments and were themselves respected professionals. Kelly took part in almost all public events, especially sports-related ones, and had a bright future ahead. Her mother was both her coach and manager, dedicating a lot of time to Kelly's career. Initially, Sandra personally handled her daughter's training, but later Kelly was coached by a more experienced trainer. Kelly dedicated herself completely to sports. Her parents were supportive and actively helped her progress in her chosen path. Despite her hectic schedule, Kelly was calm and reserved. She had a fit, athletic body and natural beauty, seldom wearing makeup. Her attractiveness and sociable nature made her popular even in high school. In 1992, when she was finishing her studies, Kelly met Aaron. They had a lot in common and their relationship developed into a romance. At the age of 17, she unexpectedly became pregnant while still in school and, not ready to become a mother, she chose to have an abortion. Aaron supported her decision. In order to continue her athletic career, Kelly kept her pregnancy and abortion a secret, never telling her parents. By early 1994, Kelly's relationship with Aaron ended due to frequent arguments. She then began an affair with a married man and became pregnant at 19, despite using contraception. She did not plan to keep the child and decided to have another abortion. This decision was made in secret, as the father did not want the child either. Kelly sought a different clinic for more confidentiality but was initially refused because the pregnancy was too advanced for a safe procedure. She had to convince the doctors to perform the surgery and they finally agreed. At that time, she was in her 20th week of pregnancy. Remarkably, during 5 months of intense training, no one noticed her condition because athletes often endure challenging situations. Kelly, determined to participate in the Olympic Games, did not show weakness or ask for special treatment. Her athleticism helped her maintain a fit appearance, aided by loose clothing. Sometimes, a woman's body structure can conceal a pregnancy until later stages, as was the case with Kelly. Although the abortion was traumatic, She felt relieved to have resolved the situation and continued with her life, pursuing sports and forming new relationships. In 1995, Kelly started dating a new boyfriend named Duncan, and they were together until 1998. Duncan professed his deep love for Kelly and expressed a desire to marry her. Both were athletes who enjoyed parties and entertainment. During this time, Kelly became pregnant again with an unwanted child. After her previous traumatic abortion, she was reluctant to seek medical help. Despite being pregnant, Kelly still chose to compete in sports and compete in the World Cup. Practicing a demanding sport like water polo while pregnant is no easy feat, yet Kelly managed it. Despite the intense physical demands, no one noticed the strain she was under, not even her boyfriend on the team, as Kelly kept her pregnancy a secret. To maintain her privacy, she wore a towel to the pool and only removed it before entering the water, avoiding showing her figure in a swimsuit by wearing loose clothing. Her boyfriend remained unaware but later recalled that she never let him touch her stomach and had limited contact with him. Around the 7th month of her pregnancy, an unexpected situation occurred. During practice, a swimmer in the water next to Kelly noticed her protruding belly and suspected that she might be pregnant. The swimmer shared her suspicions with her coach. Kelly's coach then asked her about it. Kelly firmly denied being pregnant, and the coach, upon seeing her small belly, was reassured. Kelly continued to lie, fearing that it would ruin her athletic career. Kelly was participating in a local water polo event. During the event, she felt unwell and was taken to hospital on a stretcher, where she gave birth to a baby girl. She experienced severe contractions, which likely began during the competition. After the birth, Kelly abandoned the baby, who was later adopted. She even named another man as the father. Despite this, Kelly was forced to stay in the hospital with the baby until she was discharged. She did not inform her family about the birth, telling her parents that she was with friends, which they believed. No one was worried about her, allowing her to carry out her plan. On her birthday, she managed to leave the hospital to have a drink with friends. She became intoxicated. After returning from the party, at the beginning of the year, Kelly began working as a teacher at a private school. She also continued her water polo career, representing Australia at the World Championships in Canada. Kelly performed well and won a silver medal. When Kelly turned 21, she became pregnant again. Despite being pregnant, Kelly maintained a romantic relationship with Duncan, who was deeply in love and considering marriage. However, she chose to keep her pregnancy a secret from her family, friends, and Duncan, even though they had been together for a long time and he was eager to marry her. Throughout her pregnancy, Kelly did not show any physical signs. She remained slim and did not alter her lifestyle. She regularly consumed alcohol, attended parties, engaged in intimate relationships, and continued to exercise vigorously, just as she always had. In a small suburb where everyone knew each other, Kelly faced the challenge of being the subject of gossip during her pregnancies. Many people envied her and suspected something was wrong, fueling rumors about her condition. This suspicion was partly due to changes in her behavior, like wearing towels or loose-fitting clothes. While those close to her didn't notice anything unusual, some outsiders found it odd. Regardless, Kelly consistently denied any rumors about being pregnant, insisting she was fine, and no one challenged her assertions, as there was no proof to suggest otherwise. In April 1996, Kelly's relationship with Duncan began to deteriorate. He moved to a different area and bought a house, creating distance between them. Later, Kelly discovered that he had cheated on her with one of the athletes on her team. Although this betrayal hurt her, Kelly chose to forgive him and work to save their relationship. On September 12, in the year 1996, Kelly secretly gave birth to her second daughter, whom she named Tegan. She had informed her relatives that she would be spending the weekend with friends, but instead, she went to the hospital to give birth. Kelly chose a hospital far from home, reducing the risk of encountering someone she knew. For the first time during her pregnancy, she used her real name and date of birth at the hospital. She even considered keeping the baby. However, she later changed her address and phone number. At the time, it was relatively easy to hide or change personal information. Australians had access to free health care, including anonymous services if needed. Unlike her previous children, baby Tegan felt the warmth of her mother, indicating that a bond had formed between them. Kelly spent time with her daughter, breastfeeding, bathing and sleeping together. During her labor, she consulted with doctors about her future as a mother. Unlike before, she tried to avoid or abandon her child. Just 2 days after giving birth, Kelly and her daughter were discharged from hospital. However, she missed an important test required in Australia, which involves taking blood from the baby's heel for newborn screening. The early discharge was necessary because of a lack of beds in the hospital. Both Kelly and her daughter felt well and were quickly discharged to make room for other patients. On the day she was discharged from the hospital, Kelly left home between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., and no one saw the baby again. She returned to her parents' house around 3 p.m. without her daughter. Since no one knew she had given birth, there were no suspicions or questions about her absence. That evening, she met her boyfriend and went out to a family wedding where she acted normally as if nothing had happened. Her behavior raised no concerns among her relatives. For the next 10 years, no one suspected the existence of Tegan. The baby had vanished during the time between leaving the hospital and arriving at her parents' home. Since only Kelly and the doctors were aware of the baby's existence, no one searched for Tegan. The doctors did not follow up on the baby's fate, so the information remained hidden. At the end of 1998, Kelly became pregnant again due to her carelessness. By the time she discovered her pregnancy, she had already broken up with her boyfriend, Duncan. This time, she decided not to tell anyone and wanted to have an abortion. In early February 1999, she visited the new abortion clinic in Queensland. However, her request for an abortion was denied because she arrived at the clinic in the 25th week of her pregnancy, which was too late for the procedure. She faced similar refusals at other clinics, leaving her with no choice but to give birth. Kelly secretly gave birth in the hospital and immediately put the baby up for adoption. By that time, the laws regarding adoption had changed, making the process more complicated. She spoke briefly with a social worker about her lack of documents. Kelly lied, claiming it was her first birth, and provided her real name but gave false information about her contact details and address. She also stated that she did not know who the child's father was. Because of the incorrect information she provided, the social worker's job became much more difficult. When the organization that assists new mothers reviewed her case, they realized they had been misled and that this was not Kelly's first birth. They began searching for her to discuss the situation, as they lacked the necessary information to legally finalize the adoption of the child. The adoption process in the country has changed significantly, but Kelly was not aware of this. Consequently, the social workers handling the adoption paperwork performed a thorough background check on the child's biological mother. As they investigated her history and life, they uncovered numerous inconsistencies and falsehoods. They investigated Kelly's situation and found that she likely had a daughter named Tegan, whom she had given birth to several years earlier. Kelly did not abandon Tegan, she left the hospital with her. However, the only information available was that Tegan was born in a hospital near Bern. After leaving the hospital, there was no communication from Kelly. Tegan took for checkups, vaccinations, or visits to the pediatrician. For 3 years, there were no updates about the child, and Kelly's biological mother denied that Kelly had ever given birth. This situation raised alarms, leading social services employees to reach out to Kelly's mother. She confidently insisted that they were mistaken and claimed she had no grandchildren. However, the social workers suspected something was wrong and contacted the police, who began their investigation. Meanwhile, Kelly went about her life, unaware that the police were getting closer to uncovering her secrets. In 2000, on her 25th birthday, it was revealed that she was pregnant again, and this time she chose to keep the child. For the first time, she shared this news with her family and boyfriend. This decision was likely influenced by Kelly's sports career, as she was aging and had stopped competing. Kelly tried to work as a coach and present herself as a respectable mother, which was beneficial for her at that time. However, she was unaware that the investigation into the disappearance of baby Tegan was intensifying. Later, police reached out to her regarding her previous pregnancies, and Kelly was summoned for questioning. This time, she could not evade it, as police had already gathered extensive information about her. Kelly admitted to 5 pregnancies, including those that were terminated, between the ages of 17 and 24. She had 2 abortions and gave birth to 3 children, all without her family's knowledge. She stated that Tegan was born from a secret relationship with an older man named Andrew Morris. Kelly met Andrew on Vis Beach Street, where he worked in finance, and they connected in a bar. Their relationship was short-lived. When Kelly discovered she was pregnant and shared the news with Andrew, he was excited and awaited the birth. She claimed that after the baby was born, Andrew took Tegan but did not clarify where they would live. Kelly was unable to provide further details about Andrew. Nevertheless, a portrait was created based on her description for the investigation. The police began by checking their records, with the initial goal of finding the baby's father, Andrew, to find out where the child was. The police were stumped because they could not find any men matching Kelly's description. The potential matches were either too young or too old, and no one by that name lived on Bibbich Street, which cast doubt on Kelly's story. They eventually discovered an Andrew Morris, who had previously been in a relationship with Kelly, but that was years before her child was born. When the police contacted him, he confirmed that he had not seen Kelly for a long time and did not have any children with her. He had moved away a long time ago and had never lived at the address Kelly had provided. A month later, the investigation hit a temporary pause because there were no new leads on the child. However, a new police took over the case, and Kelly was called in for questioning again. She recounted the same story she had shared with the previous police, but some details had changed, and which the new police noticed. For instance, the father's last name had suddenly shifted from Andrew Morris to Andrew Norris. With a friendly smile, Kelly claimed she might have made a mistake during the earlier questioning and now remembered the correct last name, which confused the police. They directly asked her if she had killed her daughter. Kelly was surprised and denied it, asking to stop the audio recording of the interrogation. She was clearly distressed, mainly worried about how discussing her pregnancy might impact her career. However, there wasn't enough evidence to charge her, so the Kelly was released, and the investigation continued. Police, after considerable effort, were unable to locate Andrew Norris. However, they were unable to find any men matching Kelly's description, nor were there any children resembling Tegan enrolled in schools or kindergartens in the Minley area or surrounding communities. Police sifted through some 86,000 birth records in an attempt to identify potential adoptive parents for the child, but they found no new leads. Despite Kelly's increasing dishonesty, she continued to mislead the police. She said she saw Tegan 1-year-old in mid-1997, but no one could confirm her claim. Despite this, the police remained optimistic and continued their investigation. They contacted Kelly's ex-boyfriend, Duncan, as her relationship with him coincided with the clandestine relationship that led to Tegan's birth. Duncan maintains that he did not know about Kelly's affair. Duncan suspected that Kelly was pregnant, but she never mentioned it to him. He noticed that she never let him touch her belly, though he didn't think much of it at the time. They lived apart and only saw each other occasionally. He willingly agreed to provide his DNA for testing. The results showed that he was not the biological father of Kelly's first or third child, as both were adopted by other families. Unfortunately, the police did not have DNA samples from the missing baby, so they couldn't confirm if Duncan was the father of Tegan. Connecting all the data to confirm Tegan's existence was a challenge because information about the mother and baby was incomplete and inaccurate, making the investigation even more difficult. While the police worked to solve the mystery and find the Tegan, Kelly continued her life without concern. During this time, rumors spread around town that Kelly had multiple abortions, had children, and abandoned them. These rumors damaged her coaching career and damaged her reputation. Kelly eventually gave birth to a baby girl, whom she chose to keep, and she introduced her to all her relatives. In 2004, to help restore her reputation, she married the father of her fourth child. The police were unable to get any information about Tegan's father, Andrew Norris. Kelly frequently changed her story, which caused the police to lose confidence in her. The case stalled and they offered Kelly a deal. If she pleaded guilty to the child's murder and revealed where the body was buried, she would not face any charges and could avoid jail time. Despite these terms, Kelly maintained her innocence, claiming that she did not kill the child. She claimed that the child was still alive and suggested that both the child's and the father's names may have been changed, or that they may have left the country and are now untraceable. She believed that this was the reason why the police had been unable to locate them. The police found the scenario unlikely. Why would Andrew change both his name and Tegan's if he hadn't kidnapped her? He could have simply taken his daughter away from her mother and updated the necessary paperwork, enrolling her in a nursery, school, or hospital. Why did he remain in hiding for so many years? There is no clear reason for this. The situation was further complicated by a ban on sharing information about the case, which prevented police from seeking help from the media or the public. When Kelly declined a plea bargain and police failed to investigate for years, they concluded that Tegan was dead and the case was treated as a murder. They also deemed Andrew to be a fictitious person. However, there was no solid evidence supporting these claims. Despite the absence of direct evidence or testimony against Kelly, she was charged with Tegan's murder on November 17, 2009. Kelly maintained her innocence, and the case was referred to court. The prosecution claims that Tegan's murder occurred on September 14, 1996, the day Kelly was discharged from the hospital. Shortly after leaving, the baby went missing. Kelly had very little time to commit the crime and dispose of the body. To protect her social status and image, Kelly hid her pregnancy and discarded the baby. She returned home the same day as if nothing had happened, met her boyfriend, and went to celebrate a relative's wedding. During the trial, Kelly maintained her innocence. Her first boyfriend, Aaron, supported her and they rekindled their relationship after her divorce. He shared that it was difficult for them to decide to terminate her pregnancy the first time, and it was a difficult healing process for Kelly, leading him to believe that she was not capable of murder. However, he did not know that she later had another abortion and gave birth to the children she abandoned. In front of the jury, the prosecutor had no concrete evidence, witnesses, or bodies. Only circumstantial evidence against her. Prosecutors described Kelly as a dangerous, manipulative person who would do anything to get what she wanted. Her ability to abandon her children raised suspicions about her capacity to kill. A psychiatrist confirmed that Kelly displayed narcissistic traits and was adept at playing the victim. The trial lasted 4 months and was complicated. Despite the uncertainty of the indictment, the jury found Kelly Lane guilty, not of murdering Tegan, but of perjury. The verdict was handed down on December 13, 2010. The trial reconvened on April 15, 2011, when Kelly confessed to killing Tegan. She was sentenced to 18 years in prison. As a mother unable to care for her many children, she began her sentence in prison, with all of her appeals being rejected. During the trial, Kelly displayed no emotions, appearing indifferent to her baby's fate, which likely influenced the jury's decision. After entering prison, she broke up with Aaron but continued to send him love letters. Meanwhile, Aaron had begun dating someone else. This new girlfriend requested in a reply letter that Kelly stop contacting them, which angered Kelly. In response, she sent letters to Aaron's new girlfriend and asked her friends to harass her. Kelly's cellmates joined in, insulting Aaron's new girlfriend on social media. The woman, tired of being harassed, decided to end her relationship with Aaron. Kelly, 48, is currently serving a prison sentence but will soon be eligible for parole. She maintains her innocence and insists that her daughter is still alive. Kelly's parents fully support her and believe the court's decision was unfair due to a lack of evidence linking Kelly to the child. In an interview, Kelly Lane revealed that she hid her pregnancy to avoid embarrassing her parents. She said that she had taken birth control pills incorrectly multiple times, leading to unwanted pregnancies. New, alarming information has emerged in connection with the case. On May 12, 2023, a taxi driver contacted the police and provided a tip. He revealed that on the day Kelly was discharged from the hospital, he had picked her and her baby up. During the ride home, Kelly asked him to stop the car. She then got out and left the baby on the side of the road. Although the driver testified to this, he did nothing at the time. After dropping Kelly off at home, he was racked with guilt and decided to go back to check on the baby. When he arrived, he saw a woman who said she would take care of the baby, but he left without any information about her. The police attempted to verify this account, but they could not find any confirmation or anyone else who had seen the woman.